Chapter 1639 Primordial Phoenix's Outburst? Chapter 1639 Primordial Phoenix's Outburst. If I heal her and let her continue traveling with you, she will undoubtedly be hurt again, perhaps even face death. The Primordial Phoenix explained the reason behind her condition, her tone resolute. In that case, I would rather she stay here with us, where she will be close to her own bloodline and, more importantly, where she'll be safe. Hearing this, Yuan calmly replied, "You're right. It is dangerous to be with me and there's a high chance she'll get hurt again in the future. However, it's her decision whether she wants to continue traveling with me. Neither you nor I have the right to decide her path for her. Moreover, she doesn't even belong in this world. It's unreasonable to ask her to stay." "You speak so confidently despite knowing nothing." The Primordial Phoenix sneered. "Why don't you enlighten me then? You're not worth it." Yuan shrugged. "Then I guess we have nothing left to talk about." He put Feng Yuxiang away and prepared to leave. "Where do you think you're going? This isn't a place where you can come and go as you please," the Primordial Phoenix said sharply, her voice echoing with authority. "Leave that phoenix behind and only then will I allow you to leave." With those words, she unleashed a powerful pressure, instantly restricting Yuan's movements. The Primordial Phoenix was undoubtedly one of the strongest beings Yuan had encountered so far, second only to the Primal Monarch. If compared to a cultivator, her power would rival that of a cultivation god, an entity that stood at the very peak of the cultivation world. Sensing the Primordial Phoenix's overwhelming presence, Yuan instantly realized that he was powerless against her, and that not even the Monarch's power could save him. However, Yuan remained calm, confident that the Primal Monarch was watching everything unfold and wouldn't allow him to die. "If you think the Primal Monarch will save you, think again," the Primordial Phoenix said, her eyes gleaming with certainty. "He and I have an agreement, that he won't interfere with anything that happens within my territory no matter what." She had guessed the obvious reason behind his calm demeanor. "If he does show up to save you, I am willing to fight him to death." Yuan was speechless. He couldn't understand why the Primordial Phoenix was so determined to keep Feng Yuxiang in the Eternal Phoenix domain with them. Before Yuan could respond, she continued, "Or perhaps you believe I can't kill you because that isn't your real body. Unfortunately for you, my flames can burn anything, even a body crafted from your soul." Her voice carried a cold certainty that sent a chill through the air. Yuan's eyebrows twitched at her words. "She can tell that this isn't my real body?" He cried inwardly. "As a courtesy to the Primal Monarch, I will give you one last warning. Leave behind that phoenix. Otherwise, I completely erase you from existence." Suddenly, flames erupted around them, encircling Yuan and trapping him within a blazing sphere of fire. The intense heat pressed in from all sides, leaving him no escape. Seeing this, Yuan spoke out loud, "I know you're seeing this, you old booger. Are you really going to let me die?" "It's useless. The Primal Monarch won't interfere." The Primordial Phoenix sneered at his futile attempt. However, a voice suddenly resounded, "You were quite confident that you'd be fine right before I sent you off, so what is this, you little brat?" The Primordial Phoenix frowned when she realized it was the Primal Monarch's voice. "Primal Monarch, I won't hurt him as long as he leaves behind the phoenix." The Primal Monarch then spoke, but not to the Primordial Phoenix. "You heard her, brat. It would save me a lot of headaches if you leave behind that phoenix." "I'd rather die." Yuan sneered. "It's just a phoenix. I'm sure you can easily acquire more when you return to your world." "Just a phoenix? She's much more than that to me. If you're not going to help, just leave. You useless old booger." After a brief silence, a deep sigh echoed through the fiery enclosure. Suddenly, a rift tore open beside Yuan, and the Primal Monarch emerged from it. "What do you think you are doing, Primal Monarch? We had an agreement. Don't tell me you plan on breaking it." The Primordial Phoenix roared in anger. "I know we had an agreement," the Primal Monarch responded, his voice calm yet firm. "But I cannot allow my one and only son, since the beginning of time, to die here." He paused, his gaze steady on the Primordial Phoenix. "Why are you so determined to take his companion from him, anyway? Even if she dies by his side, what does that have to do with you? It's not like she's the only phoenix out there." The Primordial Phoenix trembled at his words, her composure faltering. After a moment, she responded with a fierce intensity, "It has everything to do with me. You're not the only one trying to save your child here, Primal Monarch. That phoenix is my daughter, my oldest." "What? Your daughter?" Yuan's eyes widened with shock after hearing the Primordial Phoenix's unexpected claim. Feng is her daughter? How is that even possible? He cried inwardly. And unlike you who merely adopted that human, she's my biological daughter, the primordial phoenix continued, her voice trembling with emotion, revealing the feeling she had been holding back all this time. Yuan stared at the primordial phoenix, his jaw slack in disbelief. He could sense the truth in her words. Her emotions were raw and genuine, leaving no room for doubt. However, Yuan couldn't fathom how Feng Yuxiang could be her child. Had Feng Yuxiang somehow traveled to the 9 heavens, much like he had accidentally found himself in the primal expanse? So she was your child, huh? That explains a lot. The primal monarch mused. The primordial phoenix pointed at Yuan, her voice rising with fury as she shouted, I won't allow my daughter to stay with someone who let her nearly die, even if you are the primal monarch's son. Her fierce gaze burned with such intensity that Yuan felt as if his entire body was engulfed in flames. Coupled with her harsh words, he felt a deep sense of guilt, as though he was in the wrong. Chapter 1640 A Vicious Curse. Chapter 1640 A Vicious Curse. Since you're her mother, this changes everything. However, that doesn't mean I'm willing to let you take her away from me. Yuan said to the primordial phoenix after a moment of silence. He continued, how about this? Why don't you help your daughter recover first, then we can discuss her future together. I promise that I won't leave before the two of you have a conversation. I really don't want to fight you. You don't want to fight me? You aren't even capable of doing so. The primordial phoenix sneered. She turned to look at the primal monarch and continued, although you haven't done anything yet, I am still going to consider this a breach of our agreement, primal monarch. Does this mean you have given up on trying to kill my son? That will depend on my daughter's testimony. If I find out that he's mistreated her even slightly, I will not hesitate to kill him even if it's the last thing I do, she responded in a cold voice. The primordial phoenix removed the flame shortly after and said to Yuan, follow me. She created a rift and entered it. Go ahead. I won't be coming along. The primal monarch said. All right. Yuan nodded and followed the primordial phoenix into the rift. Yingzi, who had been watching in the background, silently followed him. As for the 3 phoenixes, so the phoenix inside that egg was my eldest sister, huh? No wonder I felt an odd sense of familiarity with her. The young lady mused, her voice softening as the realization dawned on her. I can't believe that the first princess has returned after so long. The woman muttered in a dazed voice. Things are going to get chaotic here very soon. I need to notify everyone of the situation as soon as possible. The middle-aged man sighed. Once Yuan stepped through the rift, he found himself in a vast, breathtaking garden that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. The air was thick with the fragrance of medicinal plants, all flourishing with vibrant yang energy. Put my daughter on that altar. The primordial phoenix pointed to the altar covered with complex array symbols in the distance. Yuan nodded and approached the altar before retrieving Feng Yuxiang's egg and placing it in the center of the altar. Get back, said the primordial phoenix as she stood before the altar. Yuan stepped back and waited for her next move. However, the primordial phoenix didn't do anything besides silently staring at the egg with a motherly gaze. A few moments later, she suddenly frowned and roared, which bastard placed such a vicious curse on her? That happened to her before we met, so I don't know the details. Yuan quickly shook his head when she turned to look at him for answers. Just so you know, I've been working to get that curse removed since we met, he added. The reason why she hasn't emerged from her shell is because of this damned curse. The primordial phoenix revealed with a cold sneer. Unfortunately, I cannot do anything until we completely remove the curse, or I risk injuring her, even killing her. Do you have a way to remove the curse? Yuan asked. We can remove the curse with the help of a treasure. However, we don't have that treasure at our territory. But you know where it is, right? The treasure is called the Sacred Chalice of Purification, and it is in the possession of those annoying dragons at the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, she said. The Divine Dragon Sanctuary? Yuan didn't expect to hear this name again. It's a rank 1 territory, one that rivals our Eternal Phoenix domain, controlled by the dragon race. The primordial phoenix sighed, her frustration evident. I would retrieve the treasure myself, but doing so would undoubtedly spark an all-out war between our territories. I can get the treasure. Yuan suddenly volunteered. She looked at him and sneered, You? What can you possibly achieve with that level of cultivation? Your monarch's power is useless against those whose strength far exceeds your own. Her tone was sharp, dripping with condescension. Must everything be solved with violence and force? Yuan shook his head. he proceeded to transform, revealing his dragon form to her. You. The primordial phoenix's frown deepened as she sensed the unmistakable scent of a dragon exuding from his body. This was the first time such a scent had breached her sacred territory, her private sanctuary. Her displeasure was evident, her gaze hardening with irritation. "I'll go there as a fellow dragon," Yuan said with a calm smile, ignoring her displeased glares. "Even if you go there as a dragon, it won't do you any good," the primordial phoenix scoffed. "The sacred chalice of purification isn't just any treasure, it's one of their most valuable, revered as sacred. It has never left their territory before, and they guard it like their life depends on it." "That does sound troublesome," Yuan mumbled to himself after hearing this. After a moment of silence he shrugged. "Well, I'll figure something out, probably." "You? Why would my daughter follow someone as foolish as you?" The primordial phoenix sighed. "Then do you have a better suggestion?" Yuan inquired. The primordial phoenix remained silent. Eventually she said, "Even the primal monarch might not be able to acquire the treasure from them without a fight, so I really have no idea how you're going to do it. However, it's still better than suddenly going to war with them, not that I am afraid of them or anything like that. We've been trying to conquer or eliminate each other since the beginning of time," the primordial phoenix continued coldly. "We've gone to war more than once, even for reasons far more insignificant than this. All we need is time to prepare, and that's exactly what we'll be doing while you do your thing. So don't worry. Even if you fail to secure the treasure, we'll strike when the time is right." Yuan swallowed nervously. The primordial phoenix's expression was deadly serious as she spoke of going to war with the dragons, all for the sake of reviving her daughter. Her resolve was unwavering, showing just how far she was willing to go for her child's life. Chapter 1641 Human from Back Then. Chapter 1641 Human from Back Then. "I'll do whatever it takes to acquire the treasure. Just don't do anything reckless and foolish before I return." Yuan shook his head at the primordial phoenix's eagerness to go to war with the dragons. "Who the hell are you to tell me what to do?" The primordial phoenix sneered. She continued, 10 years. "If you haven't returned with the treasure by then, we will go there and get it ourselves." 10 years? Yuan smiled inwardly after hearing this generous number. "I only plan to stay in this world for another year at most. As if I need 10 years. All right. 10 years. He agreed to her terms. "Anyway, I will need some time to prepare before I head to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. If I go there in my current state, with an incomplete chaotic heart, they will definitely suspect my identity." The primordial phoenix narrowed her gaze on him, seemingly pondering something. "Since you brought my daughter back to us, we will assist you in that regard," she suddenly said. "Ah, really?" Yuan wasn't expecting this at all and was pleasantly surprised. "It's only a single chaotic heart and it's your first, so it won't take much effort." "Then I will take up on your offer," Yuan said. "By the way, I have been meaning to ask you this, but how did Feng Feng, your daughter, end up in the human world? Are you seriously asking me that? Do you even know anything about the primal expanse? Are you really the primal monarch's son?" The primordial phoenix suddenly bombarded him with questions. "Now that you mentioned it, I don't really know much about the primal expanse." Yuan suddenly came to this realization. Despite spending over 100 years in the primal expanse, Yuan hadn't taken the time to learn much about its intricacies. Instead, he had devoted nearly all his focus to training. "I never anticipated that I would be leaving the primal expanse so soon back then, so I never really paid attention to the world, and that old booger never told me much about the world either." Yuan sighed inwardly. "Did the primal monarch really not tell you anything about our world? How long have you been living in the primal expanse?" The primordial phoenix asked. "I came to the primal expanse by accident a little over a year ago," he said. "Only a year ago? And you'd become the primal monarch's son in that little time? Something isn't adding up here." The primordial phoenix frowned. "It's a little complicated, but this isn't my first time to the primal expanse." "Elaborate." "Since she's Feng Feng's mother, I guess telling her the truth is fine. She'd find out eventually anyway." With that in mind, Yuan explained his situation to her. "I lived in the primal expanse for a little bit in my previous life," he calmly explained. The primordial phoenix's eyes widened after hearing this. "Your previous life? Reincarnation." "Wait a minute." The primordial phoenix suddenly began approaching him, her movements graceful yet deliberate. When she stood directly in front of him, she leaned in, bringing her face so close to his that their lips were just a breath apart, almost touching. Her gaze was fierce, searing into his face with such intensity that it felt as though her eyes alone could burn him. The heat of her presence was almost overwhelming, like a fire just beneath the surface. After a tense moment of silence, she abruptly stepped back, her eyes widening in shock as she cried out, "Why you? No wonder you felt so familiar. You're that human from back then. The one who appeared out of nowhere and caused chaos in the primal expanse for 100 years before vanishing just as suddenly." Her voice was filled with both recognition and disbelief. "Ichim? You know me, Tiani?" Yuan asked, his brow furrowing as he tried to recall the primordial phoenix from Tiani's memories. However, he had fought so many phoenixes during that time that it was impossible to pinpoint her for certain. "Who in the primal expanse hasn't heard of you back then?" the primordial phoenix sneered. "Though I never met you personally, I heard all about your so-called feats, how you went from territory to territory, beating up the owners individually." Her voice was laced with a mixture of disbelief and frustration as she recalled the stories of his chaotic past. "As a matter of fact, you also made a mess in the Eternal Phoenix domain back then," the primordial phoenix continued, her voice rising with frustration. "Unfortunately, I was away when you invaded our territory. By the time I returned, you had already disappeared from the primal expanse, so I wasn't able to exact revenge." Her eyes burned with fury as she recalled the memory of returning home, only to find her people beaten to a pulp and their treasures plundered. The humiliation and rage she had felt at that moment resurfaced, igniting her anger once more. "Oh, that was just my training," Yuan said as he reminisced the past. "Then why did you take our treasures? It requires a lot of resources to form chaotic hearts, you know? Anyway," Yuan continued calmly, "while I did take your treasures, I didn't kill any of the phoenixes. Besides, you guys were the aggressors. I was simply passing through your territory when your people attacked me first, so you can't really blame me for defending myself." The primordial phoenix trembled, but she eventually stopped. "That explains why the primal monarch never showed up to stop you." "Whatever," the primordial phoenix suddenly scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. "That's all in the past, and am not petty enough to hold a grudge over something that happened millions of years ago." Her tone softened slightly, though the tension in the air lingered. "Thanks. Now, can you tell me about your daughter's situation?" Yuan returned to the topic. "Before that, you should learn more about the primal expanse," she said. "In that case, allow me to explain." A third voice suddenly resounded. "I knew you hadn't left yet." The primordial phoenix sneered, her voice dripping with disdain. "But to snoop around in my private world. I didn't realize you were this shameless, primal monarch." Sure enough, a moment later, the primal monarch appeared before them, stepping through an entrance he had created himself with a faint smile on his face. Chapter 1642 The Connection Between Two Worlds. Chapter 1642 The Connection Between Two Worlds. Shameless? I'm just trying to ensure my son's safety. That's all. I have no interest in you or your world. The primal monarch shrugged. "Ah, do you think I am the type to go back on my words? I am nowhere as shameless as you, primal monarch. Anyway, you had plenty of chances to explain to him before, so why didn't you do so?" Good question." The primal monarch began pondering with a serious face. A few moments later, he had a look of realization and said, "I remember now. I forgot to tell him." "Are you serious?" The primordial phoenix frowned. He shrugged. "My mind was occupied with other things back then, and teaching him about our world wasn't a priority, so I never gave it any thought." "Unbelievable," Yuan muttered. "Anyway, let me make it up by explaining our world to you now." The primal monarch looked at Yuan and went on to explain the connection between the primal expanse and the nine heavens. "As you already know by now, the beasts of your world are originally from the primal expanse. Of course, not all of them came from the primal expanse, but a good portion of them are. Now the question is, how does that work? How did they enter your world? But before I answer that question, I have one for you. What happens when a human dies in your world?" The primal monarch faced Yuan with a profound smile. "Well, as long as their soul isn't destroyed, they will eventually be reincarnated. Without the memories of their past lives, obviously." The primal monarch nodded and continued asking, "Then what do you think happens to beasts after their death?" Yuan pondered for a moment before responding, "Unlike humans, beasts don't reincarnate. Unless they have a unique bloodline, they simply return to nature, being part of the world as spiritual energy." "You're partially correct, and you're missing a few pieces." The primal monarch spoke. "Just like humans, beasts also reincarnate," he proceeded to explain. However, their process is vastly different. When a beast dies, as long as its chaotic heart, or core, isn't destroyed or consumed, it returns to nature as chaotic essence in the primal expanse and spiritual energy in your world. Over time, that energy will give birth to a new beast, whether by natural birth or through another beast. Unlike humans who rely on their own bodily fluids to breed and procreate, beasts only need spiritual energy to do so. There are two ways they acquire this energy: by receiving it from another being or by absorbing the natural energy around them. Most prefer to use nature's energy, as it is both the most convenient and abundant source. However, those who wish to maintain or strengthen their bloodline's purity and strength typically acquire it from another individual. Yuan absorbed the information with a serious expression, carefully processing every word. When the primal monarch mentioned the beast's method of breeding through spiritual energy, Yuan's thoughts drifted to Lan Yingying and how she had requested his spiritual energy to conceive her future child. While it wasn't unheard of for beasts to conceive using a human spiritual energy, it was incredibly rare due to the unpredictability of the results. The fusion of human and beast energy often led to unforeseen complications, making such occurrences highly unusual and risky. However, there are special races that can conceive with a human spiritual energy without any complications, and Lan Yingying belongs to that category. Now then, let's finally get to the main topic, the primal monarch said suddenly. In the primal expanse, for reasons still unknown, when beings here perish, they don't always return to nature as chaotic essence. Instead, they sometimes transform into spiritual energy and drift into your world, where they are reborn. Huh. Yuan's eyes widened at this information. He looked at the primordial phoenix and muttered, "Does that mean your daughter died in the primal expanse and was reincarnated in the human world?" She nodded. "Yes, but due to our unique bloodline, our reincarnation process is somewhat identical to that of humans. For instance, when a human reincarnates, they will always return as humans. If I were to die right now, I would eventually come back as a primordial phoenix. However, if there are no interferences, a dragon could reincarnate as a snake or even a pig in their next life. In simpler terms, we will naturally retain our core identity and bloodline no matter how many times we are reborn, as long as there are no interferences. Therefore, no matter how many times she dies, my daughters will always be my daughter." "I see," Yuan muttered. By the way, if you didn't know, the primal expanse existed long before the human world even came into the picture. The primal monarch suddenly said, "I have another question. If a beast dies in the human world, is there a chance that they could return to the primal expanse?" Yuan asked. "No. Once one leaves the primal expanse, they will never return, at least not in that fashion. Of course, they can still return the same way you did. How often does that happen? As often as humans show up. Also, if a beast without a chaotic heart visits the primal expanse, it will be as powerless as a human. After all, only those with a chaotic heart or the monarch's bloodline could cultivate and utilize chaotic essence. That explains why I am able to use my powers even without a chaotic heart." Yuan mused to himself. That said, a beast born in the human world can still form a chaotic heart, so they're not completely hopeless. The primal monarch added. Sometime later, Yuan said, "I understand how the primal expanse and the 9 heavens are connected, but I still don't know why. Unfortunately, even I do not know why." The primal monarch shook his head. What about your bloodline? Just what exactly is the monarch's bloodline?" The primordial phoenix stared at the primal monarch with intrigue. Although the beings in the primal expanse understand and have accepted the primal monarch's powers, nobody knows how or why such a bloodline exists. Chapter 1643-6 in total? Chapter 1643-6 in total? What is the monarch's bloodline, huh? The primal monarch looked at Yuan with a profound smile on his face. After a moment of silence, he responded with a casual shrug. "No clue." "Huh." Yuan's face became dumbfounded. "I am the first of my kind, and it has been that way since the beginning of time. I do not know why I was born or my purpose. I merely exist." The primordial phoenix stared at the primal monarch with a pondering expression. As he had claimed, he had existed since the beginning of time before any other race was born. In fact, there are speculations that he had been created alongside the primal expanse itself, an ancient being intertwined with the very fabric of the world. No one truly knows the full extent of the primal monarch's power, as he has never revealed it. Throughout the ages, he has remained detached from worldly affairs, rarely interacting with its residents or intervening in their matters. He was a silent ruler, observing the world from a position so high that others could hardly comprehend it. His presence akin to that of a god. He also possessed an unrivaled ability that allowed him to command all bloodlines as if they were his servants, even those of the so-called purest and most powerful bloodlines. Due to his terrifying abilities, few dared to challenge him, allowing him to remain at the peak of the world since the beginning of time. You never questioned it or tried to find an answer? Yuan asked, his curiosity piqued. The Primal Monarch remained silent for a moment before shaking his head. I was curious during my earliest years, he admitted, but once I realized that knowledge wouldn't change anything, I have since stopped caring about it. Just what is so special about this human for the Primal Monarch to be so attached to him? The Primordial Phoenix wondered inwardly. The Primal Monarch was a godlike existence, one so far beyond the reach of most that even speaking to him seemed unimaginable. Yet, somehow, a mere human had managed to pique his interest enough to not only be adopted as his own but also be granted his immense powers. It was simply incomprehensible even for someone as experienced and knowledgeable as the Primordial Phoenix. Sometime later, after their conversation ended, the Primordial Phoenix opened a rift, leading Yuan to the Eternal Phoenix Domain's primary residence, where most of the phoenixes dwelled. There will be someone to assist you with your chaotic heart, the Primordial Phoenix said to him after opening the rift. You're not coming? I am going to examine her curse a little more. I understand. The moment Yuan emerged from the rift, he was immediately greeted by a familiar face, the young lady who was the first to approach him. And before them, multiple islands floated majestically in the sky, each one occupied by a powerful phoenix, their fiery auras radiating through the air. We meet again. I was given instructions by my mother to assist you. Your mother? You're also the Primordial Phoenix's daughter? Yuan asked. She nodded. I am the youngest. You can call me Feng Yao. Nice to meet you. By the way, how many siblings do you have? I have 5 siblings, but only 3 of them still exist in the primal expanse. The last 2 drifted into the other world, one of them being the eldest whom you brought back. So there are 6 of you in total, huh? Are you all Primordial Phoenixes? Of course not. The Primordial Phoenix bloodline is the purest and highest grade Phoenix bloodline. Besides the eldest, we all have a different bloodline. However, while our bloodline isn't as pure as the eldest, we're still at the top of our bloodline. So Feng is a Primordial Phoenix like her mother? But her character status shows a different bloodline. Is this also due to the curse? Yuan recalled that Xiaohua's character status changed when she released her seal, so Feng Yuxiang might be in a similar situation. Anyways, enough about me. What's your relationship with eldest sister? Feng Yao stared at him with glowing eyes that were filled with curiosity. We're traveling companions, Yuan said with a smile, purposefully avoiding the fact that they were in a master-servant relationship. They'd probably skin me alive if they find out about our real relationship. Yuan could imagine the Primordial Phoenix's fury if she found out, sending shivers throughout his body. How long have you known the eldest? Feng Yao continued asking as they walked to their destination. We've only known each other for a few years. Huh? That little time? You're practically strangers. Yuan looked at her with raised eyebrows, but he refrained from commenting on her logic. What was she like when she still lived in the primal expanse? Yuan suddenly asked. Feng Yao shrugged and said, I was born long after she was gone, so I don't have the slightest clue. However, the others might know. You can try asking them later. They'll just ask the Primordial Phoenix later, he said. You're really something, you know? Feng Yao suddenly sighed. What do you mean? Despite being her daughter, I rarely see my mother, let alone speak with her, Feng Yao remarked with a hint of bitterness. I think you've spent more time with her than I have in my entire life so far. Seriously? Even though you all live in the same territory? What do you know? Mother spends most of her time inside her own world. Doing what? Increase her cultivation, which could already rival even the strongest cultivators in my world. No, she spends most of her time conceiving another child. It takes hundreds of millions of years for someone at her level to conceive a single child, after all. This doesn't include the time it takes her to absorb enough chaotic essence to begin the process, either. Yuan was left speechless by this revelation. Hundreds of millions of years for a single child? I suppose it would disrupt the balance of the world if such a powerful being could conceive too quickly, Yuan thought to himself. The stronger the being, the more time is required to conceive, a principle that applies even to humans. Compared to the Primordial Phoenix, Yingying's 1,000 years is almost laughably short. Alright, we're here. Feng Yao said out loud once they reached their destination. Chapter 1644 9 Levels of Hell. Chapter 1644 9 Levels of Hell. Where exactly are we? Yuan inquired as they stood at the peak of a massive volcano. He thought they were going to feed him treasures to complete his chaotic heart. We're at the 9 Levels of Hell peak. What a terrifying name. Why did you bring me here? The Primordial Phoenix said you'd help me complete my chaotic heart. Were you expecting us to feed you treasures or something? You'll be forming your chaotic heart here. Feng Yao pointed at the raging flames inside the volcano. How does that work? Yuan asked with raised eyebrows. There are 9 floors in the 9 levels of hell, each floor engulfed in my mother, the Primordial Phoenix's flames, Feng Yao explained. If you temper your body within these flames, you'll eventually complete your chaotic heart. The deeper you go, the more intense the flames become, but the rewards will also be greater. Of course, they could have simply fed Yuan the necessary treasures to complete his chaotic heart. However, since the Primordial Phoenix couldn't kill him, she saw this as an opportunity to inflict some pain on him instead. Thus, this grueling method of tempering his body in the flames was chosen as a way to achieve his goal while ensuring he endured some suffering in the process. Not petty enough to hold a grudge, huh? Yuan recalled the Primordial Phoenix's words and shook his head inwardly. Anyway, you're only a human and your cultivation is also pathetically low, so even the first level might be unbearable for you. Feng Yao continued, that's why I'll give you this. She handed him a bottle that contained a single drop of blood inside. Phoenix blood. Yuan raised an eyebrow. My blood, to be precise. If you consume it, you'll have enhanced fire resistance for a short time, enough to endure the second level at most. It was only ordinary Phoenix blood, but Feng Yao had a powerful bloodline, so even a single drop would be priceless in the 9 heavens. Your blood is only enough for the second level? Just how powerful are these flames? Yuan asked. What do you know? My mother is the most powerful phoenix in existence. Her flames can burn even someone with fire immunity. Is that so? Have you heard of Phoenix's wrath? Yuan suddenly asked. Phoenix's wrath? Of course I have. What? How does it compare to the flames here? Feng Yao pondered for a moment before responding. The Phoenix's wrath would only be as strong as the flames in the 4th level. The 4th level only? This place is no joke. Yuan swallowed nervously. If the pain he experienced from the Phoenix's wrath was only as strong as the 4th level, he couldn't imagine how much pain had experienced in the 9th level. Alright, I'm going in, Yuan said a moment later. Don't bite more than you can chew, Feng Yao said. Yuan didn't say anything and jumped inside the entrance, diving straight toward the 2nd floor. Wah! I just warned him. And he didn't even consume my blood. Are all humans this reckless? Feng Yao was shocked when Yuan jumped straight to the 2nd level. As Yuan passed through the 1st level, a wave of intense heat washed over him, making him feel as though he had stepped into an oven. The air was thick with scorching energy, but to his surprise it wasn't painful, just overwhelmingly hot, like standing too close to a blazing fire. The moment Yuan stepped into the 2nd level, the intensity of the heat skyrocketed. It was fierce enough to scorch his skin in an instant, but despite the flame's strength, they couldn't burn him faster than his body could regenerate. His healing abilities kicked in immediately, restoring his skin as quickly as it was damaged, creating a relentless cycle of burning and regeneration. This is a great place to temper my body and increase my fire resistance, Yuan thought, his excitement growing as the flames continued their relentless assault. Perhaps I could even achieve fire immunity in this place. The burning sensation was excruciating, but it wasn't unbearable. Filled with determination, he sat down and began cultivating on the 2nd level. Wow, he's actually enduring the 2nd level right off the bat. I guess I underestimated him a little. Feng Yao mused, her interest piqued. Not only did the flames temper Yuan's body, but they also contained rich chaotic essence that gradually advanced his chaotic heart. However, the process was slower than he anticipated. I'll take years to finish my chaotic heart at this rate. I'll head to the 3rd level once I improve my fire resistance to the next level. With that in mind, Yuan continued to temper in the flames. Sometime later, a figure appeared at the 9 levels of Hell Peak and landed right beside Feng Yao. Elder Brother Mu. Feng Yao greeted this tall and handsome man with a respectful smile. When did you return? A few hours ago, he responded, his gaze staring intently at Yuan's figure. Feng Mu was the 2nd youngest in the family, but he was still a billion years older than Feng Yao. I came back immediately after hearing that the eldest has returned. Is that him? The human who brought back the eldest from the human world? Feng Mu asked. Yes, he's the one. He's less impressive than I anticipated, even disappointing, Feng Mu remarked, shaking his head in dissatisfaction. I heard he was related to the Primal Monarch too. Must be a lie. No, it's true. The Primal Monarch even showed up to protect him when Mother was about to kill him. Feng Yao said. Seriously? How is someone so weak related to the Primal Monarch? I can burn him to ashes with a single breath. Feng Mu quickly lost interest in Yuan and asked about Feng Yuxiang. Have you spoken to the eldest yet? What was she like? Haven't you heard? She came back as a shell. What? Feng Mu immediately became dumbfounded. Chapter 1645 Fire Immunity. Chapter 1645 Fire Immunity. What the hell are you talking about? The eldest came back in such a state? Feng Mu almost couldn't believe what he was hearing. Unfortunately. I don't know the situation, but Mother's going to take care of it. In the meantime, I am tasked with helping him complete his chaotic heart. Feng Yao pointed at Yuan. Feng Mu shifted his gaze to Yuan again and sneered, what a waste of time and effort. Is that really the case? Don't tell me you think differently. I don't know humans enough to tell if he's talented or not, but he was chosen by the Primal Monarch. I think that says enough. Feng Yao shrugged. At this moment, Yuan suddenly opened his eyes and stood up. After Yuan's fire resistance reached a new threshold, he wasted no time and immediately descended to the third level. The flames on the third level were no longer the familiar orange hue of the first two levels. Instead, the third level was bathed in intense blue flames, radiating an even more potent and refined heat. Even with his supreme fire resistance and powerful body, he experienced pain that was several times worse than the second level. At this point, Yuan's entire figure was completely engulfed by flames, so much so that even his silhouette was no longer visible. The blue flames enveloped him entirely, making it seem as though he had become one with the fire itself. Despite the overwhelming intensity, Yuan remained focused, letting the flames temper his body further and push his limits. Wow, he's actually cultivating in the third level, Feng Yao muttered, covering her mouth in surprise, her eyes wide with awe. She had only expected him to reach the second level at most, but in just a few days he had surpassed her expectations. Feng Yao turned to look at Yingzi, who had been silently blending in with the background, and spoke to her. How long have you been following this human? Since the moment he arrived at the primal expanse, I guess. Why are you following him? I thought shadow dwellers are introverts. I wanted to know what it means to be human. Oh, that does sound interesting. What have you learned so far? A new voice suddenly interrupted. Yingzi turned toward the voice and saw a beautiful woman with short red hair and purple eyes hovering gracefully above the 9 levels of Hell Peak. Her presence was commanding, and the air around her seemed to shimmer with an ethereal glow as she watched the scene below with calm intensity. Elder Sister Liqiu. Both Feng Yao and Feng Mu bowed to her in a respectful manner the moment they noticed her presence. This newcomer was Feng Liqiu, the second eldest in their family. After snapping out of her daze, Yingzi responded, not much, but from what I've seen, humans are beings that grow exponentially fast. From my understanding, human growth varies from person to person. Feng Liqiu said. Although I don't know how he compares with the rest of the humans in his world, he's definitely a lot better than the humans I've encountered in the primal expanse. Being the second oldest in the family, Feng Liqiu has lived for billions of years in the primal expanse, so she has encountered plenty of humans in the past. Have you spoken with Mother yet, Elder Sister Liqiu? Feng Mu asked. Yes, but it was brief. Elder Sister Liqiu, you've met the eldest before, correct? What was she like? Feng Yao suddenly asked after recalling Yuan asking her the same question. Elder Sister, huh? Feng Liqiu closed her eyes and recalled her memories of Feng Yuxiang, which were billions of years old. We never really got along and constantly competed against each other to impress Mother. As for what she was like, I don't remember. Anyway, she's probably reincarnated many times by now. I doubt she's the same person I remember. Feng Liqiu's gaze returned to looking at Yuan. I'm more interested in this human with the Primal Monarch's bloodline. She muttered with a slight smile. What's so interesting about that weakling? Feng Mu shook his head, unable to comprehend it. Are you pretending to be stupid or are you actually stupid? Feng Liqiu narrowed her gaze at him. What did you say? Did you just call me stupid? Feng Mu exclaimed, clearly surprised by her sudden mockery. Amongst the thousands of phoenixes in our territory, how many of them are capable of cultivating in the third level? Most of them can't even endure the second level. Yet, this human is able to achieve that with his pitiful cultivation. That's. Feng Mu became speechless. A human capable of withstanding Mother's flames. I'm very intrigued. A profound smile appeared on Feng Liqia's face as she returned to focusing on Yuan. Whatever. Feng Mu didn't linger and left the scene shortly after. However, he didn't leave the Eternal Phoenix domain. Are you going to stay here, elder sister? Feng Yao asked Feng Liqiu. I don't have anything else to do, so I might as well. I also want to see his limit. You think he'll be able to go higher than the third level? That's impossible. He's already at his limit on the third level. Feng Yao refused to believe that he could go any further. Is that what you think? I think he still has some tricks tucked under his sleeves. I mean, I did give him a drop of my blood, which he hasn't consumed yet. However, that won't help him in the next level. Oh, you gave him your blood? Did Mother tell you to do that? Feng Liqiu looked at her with a suspicious smile. No, but don't misunderstand. This is my way of showing gratitude. He brought back the eldest after all. 2 weeks later, a significant change occurred in the flames surrounding Yuan's body. The once ferocious flames, which had relentlessly burned him, began to shift, their intensity softening as they seemed to merge with his aura. The fire no longer consumed him but appeared to dance in harmony with his energy, as though he had mastered its power and become one with the flames. Chapter 1646 Completed Chaotic Heart. Chapter 1646 Completed Chaotic Heart. That human. He's achieved fire immunity. Feng Yao exclaimed, her expression filled with astonishment. I didn't know humans could do that. She had always believed that only beasts with unique bloodlines like phoenixes were capable of acquiring such immunity. The fact that a human had done it defied her expectations and understanding. Even in the 9 heavens, achieving fire immunity was an exceptionally rare accomplishment. Those who managed it typically relied on special techniques, priceless treasures, and years of dedicated cultivation to reach that level. There were also those born with unique physiques that granted them fire immunity naturally, but that was a different story since they hadn't earned it through effort but were simply born with the gift. The fact that Yuan had attained this without the aid of a technique made his accomplishment all the more extraordinary. However, no, this isn't something as simple as fire immunity. Feng Liqia's eyes widened as she came to this realization. Fire immunity, rank, divine, mastery, level 1, description, grants the user immunity to most fire. What? It's fusing with my fire immunity? Yuan raised an eyebrow at this notification. Is this similar to how my 2 physiques fused with each other? Unlike fusing 2 physiques together, the progress this time was much quicker. He's absorbing the flames. Feng Yao exclaimed when she noticed this. Fire immunity only makes one impervious to most fire, but it doesn't have the ability to absorb flames. Feng Liqiu narrowed her eyes and spoke, her voice calm but filled with passion. Fire immunity may be the end of the journey for most, but for us phoenixes, that is just the beginning. Above fire immunity lies true fire immunity, where one becomes truly immune to all flames, Feng Liqiu continued, and beyond that is the realm of fire harmony. Once one reaches fire harmony, not only will they be immune to fire, but they'll also be able to absorb it, transforming flames into their own power, the apex of fire control. Are you telling me that a human has managed to achieve fire harmony when even I haven't been able to do so? Feng Yao exclaimed, her voice filled with disbelief and frustration. The idea that a mere human could reach a level of mastery that had eluded her was almost inconceivable. Feng Liqiu shook her head and said, No, that can't be possible. He's just achieved fire immunity, so it doesn't make sense for him to achieve fire harmony so quickly. There must be something else going on inside that weird body of his. Suddenly, Yuan stood up and jumped even deeper into the 9 levels of hell, reaching the 4th level. The 4th level's flames were as powerful as the Phoenix's wrath, a force Yuan couldn't withstand for more than a few seconds before. However, after achieving fire immunity, the once unbearable flames became barely endurable. The progress of his physique, which had stalled at 50% before Yuan entered the 4th level, began to rise once more. As for his chaotic heart, it was already on the verge of completion. This is something different. It's similar to fire harmony, but it's not the same. Feng Liqiu mused to herself as she spent more time watching Yuan. Several hours later, Yuan completed his chaotic heart. Ding. Yuan, cultivation, Dantian 1st level spirit sovereign, cultivation, chaotic heart not applicable, Yuan wasn't surprised to see a second cultivation because Tianyi also achieved the same thing after returning to the divine heavens and cultivating his Dantian. Yuan's second cultivation soared rapidly, experiencing breakthroughs every few minutes. In just a few short hours, Yuan's second cultivation reached early chaotic master, akin to a 9th level spirit enlightenment in human cultivation, surpassing his original cultivation. What am I seeing right now? I can sense two distinct energies coming from him. Is this what happens when a human forms a chaotic heart? I have never seen or heard of anything like this before. Feng Yao exclaimed. Feng Liqiu narrowed her eyes at Yuan and said, "This isn't my first time seeing a human with a fully formed chaotic heart. Do you recall the human who made a mess in our territory several million years ago? However, he didn't have the other energy at that time, so this is also my first time seeing someone with both at once. I wonder how it affects him." "I have heard about him, but that happened before I was born." Feng Yao nodded. Now that he's formed his chaotic heart, he should be leaving soon. However, Feng Yao would soon realize that Yuan had no intention of leaving so soon. He may have formed his chaotic heart, but he still had something else to complete. Chaotic essence is essentially the same as spiritual energy, but it's more chaotic, giving it far greater destructive power, Yuan thought, recalling Tianyi's experience. Unfortunately, it can't be used with human techniques. However, I can fuse it with my spiritual energy to enhance my techniques and make them more powerful. Or, I can directly enhance my body with it. When the fusing progress halted at 70%, Yuan looked to the 5th level. After a moment of stillness, his body suddenly surged with chaotic essence. Once head strengthened his entire body with chaotic essence, Yuan jumped straight to the 5th level, where the flames were bright green and 5 times more powerful than the 4th level. Chapter 1647 5th Level of Hell. Chapter 1647 5th Level of Hell. The instant Yuan entered the 5th level of 9 levels of Hell, his progress shot up from 70% to 80%. However, the pain he was experiencing was excruciating and would break the minds of even the toughest cultivators out there. The 9 levels of Hell weren't created for humans but for phoenixes, beasts with a natural affinity for fire. Even a newly born phoenix with the lowest bloodline would have supreme fire resistance, and it wouldn't take long for them to achieve fire immunity. In fact, even a golden immortal would perish inside the 5th level, much less a spirit sovereign like Yuan. How much more is this human going to surprise me? Even I, who has almost achieved true fire immunity, can barely endure the 5th level's flames. Feng Yao exclaimed. Feng Liqiu didn't make any comments and merely watched him in silence. Yuan remained in the 5th level for a week straight, and his progress reached 89%. Once he realized he wouldn't advance any further, Yuan looked at the 6th level where purple-colored flames raged. After a moment of silence, he released a resolute roar before transforming into his dragon form. That's... Feng Yao and Feng Liqiu were startled by Yuan's transformation. While they took a moment to comprehend the situation, Yuan dove into the 6th level. This scent, does he have dragon blood flowing through his veins? Feng Yao cried out loud. Does mother know about this? Feng Liqiu looked at her with a slight frown. Dragons were forbidden from entering the Eternal Phoenix domain. It didn't matter if they were real dragons or only had a single drop of dragon blood in their whole body. Rules were rules, and not a single dragon managed to remain in their territory for more than a day, much less cultivate inside the 9 levels of Hell Peak, a sacred place for phoenixes. I don't know. Feng Yao vigorously shook her head. I was only told to bring him to this place. Once the nearby phoenixes noticed Yuan's scent, they immediately rushed over to the 9 levels of Hell Peak, thinking that a dragon had invaded their sanctuary. A dragon? In the center of the Eternal Phoenix domain? Impossible. How did a dragon manage to invade so deeply inside our territory without revealing its presence until now? This dragon has a weak presence, but it still doesn't explain how it evaded us until now. The scent is coming from the 9 levels of Hell Peak. Don't tell me they're trying to sabotage our sacred place. Hundreds of phoenixes gathered at the 9 levels of Hell Peak within minutes, surrounding the place. Not a single one of them wasn't baffled at the moment of their arrival when they saw the situation. What the fuck is going on? What the fuck am I looking at? Are my eyes deceiving me, or is there a dragon inside the 9 levels of Hell? At the 6th level, no less. None of the newcomers dared to believe their eyes. Sometime later, they snapped out of their daze and began shouting at each other. Hey, someone go fish that dragon bastard out. Why don't you do it? Although nobody there wanted to admit it, none of them could enter the 6th level, much less drag Yuan out. Lady Lichio. You're the only one here who can endure the flames on the 6th level. Eventually, they all turned to the only individual there who had any hopes of surviving the 6th level. Feng Lichio remained silent for a moment before responding to their hopeful gazes. Huh? Why should I? Her words instantly shattered their hopes and left them dumbfounded. What do you mean why? There's a dragon in our territory, inside the 9 levels of hell. She shrugged. I'm exhausted right now. Exhausted? From what? From rushing back home, she explained. An awkward silence filled the atmosphere. Suddenly, a loud and authoritative voice resounded. What the hell is going on here? Master Mu. These phoenixes became hopeful again after seeing Feng Mu's appearance. These phoenixes pointed to the 6th level of the 9 levels of hell without uttering a word. When Feng Mu followed their gesture and saw Yuan cultivating in the 6th level, his eyes widened with shock and disbelief. The 6th level? Impossible. He immediately looked at Feng Lichio and questioned her. What did you do to him? He assumed Feng Lichio was responsible for Yuan's achievements since she was the only one there capable of entering the 6th level. And why the hell does he smell like a dragon? Is Mother aware of this? No clue what you're talking about. Feng Lichio casually responded. Feng Mu looked at Yuan and frowned. Whatever. If you're not going to take him out, I will do it myself. I won't allow him to dirty this place with his presence any longer. Halt. Right as Feng Mu prepared to dive into the volcano, a calm and clear voice rippled through the air, halting everyone's movement. The second the phoenixes recognized this voice, they lowered their heads and loudly greeted her. Empress Feng. We greet Her Majesty. The primordial phoenix emerged from a rift, her figure hovering majestically above the 9 levels of hell. Her gaze was fixed intently on Yuan, observing him with a mixture of surprise and curiosity. Nobody is allowed to disturb him. The phoenixes bowed to her and left the scene without uttering a single word. The only ones who remained were her children. Once most of the spectators were gone, the primordial phoenix created a barrier around the peak that prevented Yuan's scent from spreading. Mother, did you let him enter knowing that he has dragon blood flowing through his veins? Feng Mu asked. Yes, I am aware. Once the primordial phoenix confirmed this fact, Feng Mu no longer had any say in this matter. He gave Yuan one final glance before disappearing from the scene. I know you're watching this, Primal Monarch. The primordial phoenix suddenly spoke out loud. Sure enough, another rift appeared above the volcano, and the Primal Monarch emerged from it. I don't remember the last time I made so many public appearances in such a short time. In fact, this might be a first, he spoke as he appeared. Chapter 1648 Impervious to Fire. Chapter 1648 Impervious to Fire, Primal Monarch. Feng Yao and Feng Lichio lowered their head after snapping out of their daze. The Primal Monarch acknowledged them with a slight nod before looking at the Primordial Phoenix and asking, So, why did you call for me? The Primordial Phoenix looked at Yuan and spoke, You know, I have secretly been to the human world before, and I even spent a few thousand years there. What? When did you do such a thing? And why? Feng Lichio expressed shock after learning this information for the first time despite being the second eldest. After giving birth to my 4th child, I suddenly had the urge to see how my first child was doing, so I traveled to the human world to satisfy my curiosity. Just going there took several million years of traveling non-stop. I was only able to achieve this because she had the same bloodline as me, and I could sense someone of the same bloodline no matter the distance. If it weren't for that, I wouldn't have been able to find the human world, much less see my child. After arriving at the human world and confirming with my eyes that my first child was there, I spent several thousand years exploring the world. During my time there, I studied the humans, learning their customs and whatnot. Unfortunately, what stood out the most about humans was their insignificant strength. Even the strongest cultivators back then were laughably weak. The primordial phoenix recalled her experience in the divine heavens long before it was split. No matter how much potential they had, it didn't impress me even in the slightest. That's why I left their world so quickly. It was simply too boring, and I have already reunited with my first child, without her knowledge. However, this human cultivating inside my flames right now, he's different, and I want to know if you had anything to do with it, Primal Monarch. The Primal Monarch smiled and said, In essence, you want to know if I have anything to do with his abilities, correct? The primordial phoenix nodded. The Primal Monarch looked at Yuan and smiled. He may have my bloodline, but what he's displaying right now has nothing to do with it. It's something entirely different. I see. Why do you even care? The Primal Monarch asked. Just curious, she responded in a nonchalant manner. A few days later, Yejun's aura suddenly began to transform. The Primordial Phoenix and the others watched with anticipation. Yejun stared at the progress for several hours straight, hoping it would be completed without needing him to enter the 7th level. Realizing he needed stronger flames to complete his progress, Yejun turned his gaze toward the 7th level, where black flames roared ominously. These flames exuded a dangerous and oppressive energy, far more intense than anything he had encountered before. I will only be able to last a few seconds in the 7th level. Even with his godlike physique, fire immunity, and incredible regeneration, Yejun knew he would perish in the 7th level if he stayed longer than a few seconds. The sheer power of the black flames was beyond anything he had faced before, and even this estimate felt like a dangerous gamble. But despite the risk, Yejun was determined to finish the progress. He's looking toward the 7th level. Don't tell me he plans on going deeper? Does he have a death wish? Feng Yao swallowed nervously. Feng Liqiu narrowed her eyes, recalling her first time entering the 7th level. When she first attempted the 7th level, she had just achieved fire harmony, but even that was not enough to withstand the black flames, and she nearly lost her life just entering it. If Mother didn't save me at the last second, I would have perished on that day. Feng Liqiu sighed inwardly. After preparing himself, Yejun took one last deep breath before jumping into the black flames. The flames are much more powerful than I anticipated. I won't last more than a second in this place. Yejun immediately realized that had underestimated the prowess of the black flames, but it was already too late to go back. More than half of his body was burned away the instant he entered the 7th level. However, at the same time, his progress also advanced. The moment Yejun's physique evolved, the black flames ceased their relentless assault on his body. Instead of burning him, the flames began to restore his body, even strengthening it. Once his body was fully restored, the flames began filling his chaotic heart with chaotic essence, causing his cultivation to soar once again. His cultivation halted at perfect chaotic master, rivaling someone at the peak of divine master. Yejun inspected his body, marveling at the transformation. The black flames, which had once pushed him to the brink of collapse with unbearable pain, now felt soothing and comforting, as if he were basking in the perfect sunlight. Am I completely impervious to fire now? Yejun wondered inwardly. He turned his gaze toward the 8th level, where beautiful white flames raged with an ethereal intensity. Strangely, despite their brilliance and power, he couldn't sense any threat from them. It was as though the flames no longer held the capacity to harm him. What just happened? His body was on the verge of destruction just seconds ago. Now it seems as if the flames don't even affect him. Feng Liqiu exclaimed, her voice filled with shock and disbelief. Not only is he unaffected by it, he's absorbing the flames and turning them into his own strength. The Primordial Phoenix muttered, her eyes narrowing as she observed Yejun with a thoughtful expression. Chapter 1649 Harmonious Heaven Refining Immortal Physique. Chapter 1649 Harmonious Heaven Refining Immortal Physique, turning the flames into his own strength. That is a realm above fire harmony. Feng Liqiu muttered in a dazed voice. While the phoenixes remained stunned by Yejun's remarkable achievements, he decided to push the boundaries of his newfound power. Without hesitation, he leaped straight into the 8th level, where the brilliant white flames roared fiercely. Sure enough, I don't feel any difference. No. This is even more comfortable than the black flames. Yejun thought, closing his eyes as the white flames enveloped him. This is outrageous. Feng Liqiu muttered, her body trembling as she stared at Yejun's figure. The white flames, powerful enough to seriously injure even her, despite having pushed her fire harmony to its limits, seemed to have no effect on him. Just days ago he had struggled on the 2nd level, yet now this mere human was enduring the flames of the 8th level with ease. The sight left her speechless and shaken. I don't get it. The Primordial Phoenix suddenly muttered out loud. Even if he has the ability to absorb my flames, there should be a limit to how much he could absorb without blowing up. His cultivation isn't increasing, and I refuse to believe that his single chaotic heart could contain so much chaotic essence. Where are all of the chaotic essence going? The Primordial Phoenix's question was a valid one. Just like a cup, no vessel, no matter how powerful, could hold an infinite amount. If one kept pouring water into a cup, it would eventually overflow. Similarly, There had to be a limit to how much power Yuan could absorb before reaching a breaking point. Yet this breaking point was nowhere to be seen with Yuan. Sure enough, Yuan's chaotic heart could not contain an infinite amount of chaotic essence, and once it was completely filled to the brim, the chaotic essence was sent elsewhere. Primordial Fire. Rank, Celestial, Mastery Level 1. Description: the highest level of fire mastery attainable only by a few bloodlines. Primordial fire transcends all other flames, bypassing even the strongest fire resistance and immunity. It is the ultimate expression of fire, a flame unrivaled in destructive capability and feared by even phoenixes. So I can turn the flames I absorbed into my own power. Yuan swallowed nervously at the implications. If I can merge my physique with the fire immunity, I should be able to do the same with other immunities. Perhaps that's how I complete my new physique. Sometime later, Yuan turned his gaze to the 9th and final level of the 9 levels of hell. Unlike the previous 8 levels, there were no visible flames in the 9th. However, despite the absence of fire, Yuan could clearly sense something powerful and ominous lingering within. It looks like I am not completely impervious to all fire yet. Yuan sighed inwardly. Though he had endured the 8th level without any issues, he could instinctively sense that the 9th level was different, deadly even for him. I guess it's about time I leave this place. In just a few days, Head completed his chaotic heart, gained fire immunity, evolved his physique, and even acquired a celestial rank skill. Feeling satisfied by the results, Yuan left the 9 levels of hell. The moment Yuan emerged from the volcano, he instinctively sensed something hurtling toward him. Turning around, his eyes widened as he spotted a massive ball of black flames flying directly at him. Yuan instinctively raised his arm, opening his palm to block the incoming flames with his bare hand. The moment the massive ball of flames made contact with his palm, it was absorbed instantly. The flames, which were strong enough to kill even immortals, vanished into his hand, leaving Yuan unscathed. What was that about? Yuan looked at the primordial phoenix who was responsible for the surprise attack. I wanted to confirm your abilities. What if that had killed me? But it didn't. Unbelievable. Why are you complaining? You should be thanking me for letting you use the 9 levels of hell. I would have if you didn't send me here because of your pettiness. Yuan shrugged. I have no clue what you're talking about. The primordial phoenix shook her head. Whatever. I'm going to head to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary now that I have completed my chaotic heart. Wait a minute. Feng Liqiu suddenly spoke up. Yejun? Who are you? Yuan asked. I'm Feng Liqiu, the second eldest in the family. Oh hello. Do you need something from me? Can you tell me how you are absorbing the flames? It's mostly thanks to my unique physique, that's all. Were you born with that physique? Yes. Feng Liqiu suddenly became silent with a ponderous expression on her face. If there's nothing else, wait, I have one more thing, a request. What kind? Feng Liqiu narrowed her eyes and spoke, give me some of your blood and chaotic essence. What? Yuan raised an eyebrow, unable to comprehend her request at first. However, Feng Yao and the primordial phoenix reacted with shock, their eyes wide in disbelief. The request clearly struck them, while the primal monarch, observing the scene, wore a slight smile as if amused. Yejun? Wait a second. Yuan suddenly had a sense of déjà vu. Then he recalled a certain conversation he had with Lan Yingying. He swallowed nervously before asking, that request, you want to conceive with my energy? She nodded without hesitation. What the hell are you thinking? The primordial phoenix suddenly interjected. I have been wanting a child for a while now and I think this is the perfect time. But with a human? I have never heard of anything like that before. Is that even possible? I guess we'll find out soon enough. Feng Liqiu smiled. Ahem. Yuan cleared his throat and said, it's definitely possible for beasts to conceive with humans since it's been done before in my world, but I have no intention of doing something like that with someone I don't know. But I already told you who I am. Feng Liqiu said. You know what I mean. Yuan shook his head. Chapter 1650 Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Chapter 1650 Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Honestly, I don't really understand. Feng Liqiu shook her head and she continued, most would be delighted, even honored, if I requested for their chaotic essence to conceive my child. Excluding dragons, I cannot imagine anyone refusing. Feng Liqiu's status as the daughter of the primordial phoenix alone granted her immense prestige in the primal expanse. Her lineage was revered, making her among the most respected in the realm, with many viewing her as nearly untouchable. Moreover, she was a powerhouse in her own right, standing as one of the strongest predators in the primal expanse. In the entire Eternal Phoenix domain, her strength was second only to her mother, the Primordial Phoenix. Countless powerful beings had willingly offered their chaotic essence to Feng Liqiu over the years without her even needing to ask them, but not a single one of them managed to receive her approval. Just as human men court women out of love, in the primal expanse, beings offer their chaotic essence to those they admire to express their desire for a deeper bond and in hopes of conceiving a child with them. If I'm going to conceive a child with someone, I'd at least want to get to know them first, Yuan said. Is that a human thing? Feng Liqiu asked. I guess. Hearing this, she no longer continued the topic, but she didn't appear to have given up yet. Can you bring me to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary? Yuan looked at the Primal Monarch. Do you have a plan to acquire the treasure from them yet? The Primordial Phoenix suddenly asked. He shook his head. No, I don't. I'll figure it out as things progress. The Primal Monarch didn't ask any questions and created a rift that directly led to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary for him. The rift will bring you to a place 2 days away from the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Okay. Yuan looked at Yingzi and asked, Want to come along? She immediately nodded. With the Primordial Phoenix and the Primal Monarch's presence there, the atmosphere was a little too suffocating for someone like her. Then I'll see you again once I acquire the treasure. Yuan entered the rift the next moment, followed by Yingzi. The Primal Monarch left shortly after Yuan left, disappearing into thin air. Sister, were you serious just now? Feng Yao looked at Feng Liqiu and asked. Of course. But why? I am curious, she said with a smile. What kind of child would be born from a phoenix and a human like him? I want to find out. What do you think, mother? Feng Liqiu looked at the Primordial Phoenix to get her opinion on the matter. I think that's a ridiculous reason to conceive your first child with a human. The Primordial Phoenix shook her head, but she didn't reject the idea for some reason. Feng Liqiu noticed this and chuckled. So you're also curious, huh? Now I wonder what would happen if a Primordial Phoenix like mother conceived with a human. Hearing this, the Primordial Phoenix smacked Feng Liqiu in the back of the head and sneered, Don't get ahead of yourself. After emerging from the rift, Yingzi guided Yuan toward the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Even before they began their journey, Yuan's eyes were drawn to a towering, pillar-like structure in the distance. The massive tower seemed to stretch endlessly into the heavens, dominating the horizon with its grandeur and presence. That must be the Dragon Ascending Mountain. I wanted to visit this place before, but it was too far away. Yuan recalled his experience as Tianyi. Starting from the Eternal Phoenix domain, the Divine Dragon Sanctuary was located on the far opposite side of the Primal Expanse. Without special treasures, the journey would take an unfathomable amount of time. Even with such treasures, it would have taken Tianyi over 100 years to reach the Divine Dragon Sanctuary on his own, which was why he had chosen to ignore it in the past. Do you know anything about the Divine Dragon Sanctuary? Yuan asked Yingzi as they traveled. I have never been to this part of the Primal Expanse, but the Divine Dragon Sanctuary is one of the most famous territories in this world. Although it has dragon in its name and many dragons gather there, other races are also allowed to stay in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, Yingzi continued. It's quite populated and diverse, unlike the Eternal Phoenix domain, which is more exclusive. Is that so? Over the next 2 days, Yuan pondered how he should go about acquiring the sacred chalice of purification. Unfortunately, with so little information on the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, formulating any reliable plans was pretty much impossible. In the end, Yuan decided to join the Divine Dragon Sanctuary to learn more about them first before planning anything. 2 days later, Yuan and Yingzi arrived at the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Unlike the Eternal Phoenix domain, where entry was closely guarded, no one approached or attempted to stop them from entering the territory. In fact, Yuan noticed a constant flow of other presences arriving at the territory at the same time, giving the place a more open and welcoming atmosphere. However, Yuan didn't know where to start. In order to become affiliated with a territory, one typically required the approval of the territory's master. However, the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, being one of the largest and most powerful territories in the Primal Expanse, operated differently. It was impractical for one of the strongest beings in the world to handle such insignificant matters, so a dedicated group of individuals was appointed specifically for this purpose. Yingzi, can you sense any dragons nearby? Yuan asked her. I sense a few, but none of them have the scent of a true dragon. They probably belong to an inferior bloodline. Can you bring us to the one who seems to be the most reliable? How can I tell if they're reliable? Forget it. Just bring us to the closest one. Okay. Sometime later, Yuan and Yingzi approached a tall man with striking blue hair. The moment he sensed Yuan's scent and powerful aura, the man's eyes widened in surprise and awe. Who are you? Chapter 1651 Dragon God Festival. Chapter 1651 Dragon God Festival. I am Yuan, and I traveled half the world just to come to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Yuan introduced himself. The blue-haired man swallowed nervously. He could tell just from Yuan's scent alone that he was in the presence of a true dragon with a powerful bloodline. I cannot imagine the effort and time it took you to come here, but I would like to welcome you on behalf of the Divine Dragon Council. The man said. It wasn't too bad. Yuan smiled. Anyway, I came here because... Before Yuan could finish his sentence, the man interrupted. The Dragon God Festival, correct? The what? Yuan raised an eyebrow after hearing this unfamiliar name. The Dragon God Festival, he repeated before asking. You didn't come here for the festival? Pretty much every single visitor these days are here for the festival. Sorry, but I came here to visit the Divine Dragon Sanctuary because of its widespread fame. Yuan shook his head. Please, there's no need for you to apologize. I should be the one apologizing for making such assumptions in the first place. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me. In that case, can you tell me more about this Dragon God Festival? The man nodded. The Dragon God Festival is a tradition in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary that happens only once every 25 million years. During the festival, the participants compete against each other for the title of Dragon God Successor. Naturally, since this is related to the dragon race, only dragons are allowed to participate. However, there's some leniency. Even those with inferior or incomplete dragon blood are permitted to join. Every 25 million years? Yuan wore a dumbfounded expression on his face after hearing this information. He then asked, what kind of competitions occur during the festival? I'm sorry, but I don't know, the blue-haired man replied, shaking his head. The trials are decided by the dragon god, and they change with every festival. We only learn the details of the trials when the festival is about to begin. When does the festival begin? Exactly 2 years from now, so very soon. Yuan was speechless. Since the festival takes place every 25 million years, I guess 2 years is nothing in their eyes, he sighed inwardly. Is there anything to be gained from this festival? Yuan asked a moment later. Of course. Not only will you become the dragon god's successor if you win the festival, but the dragon god will even grant you any one wish. The man replied, his voice filled with excitement. Any wish? Yuan repeated as he mused to himself. The man nodded. That's right. The dragon god is one of the most powerful beings in the primal expanse. He can fulfill almost any wish. I must be fated to participate in this festival. Yuan sighed inwardly. If he won the festival, he could wish for the sacred chalice of purification. Can I participate in the festival? He asked a moment later. Of course. As long as you are related to the dragon race, you can sign up for the festival. Are there any other requirements? For example, do I have to be affiliated with the Divine Dragon Sanctuary? No, the festival is open to everyone as long as they meet the requirements. That's great. Where do I sign up? The man pointed to the dragon ascending mountain and said, Do you see that tower? You can sign up there. Thank you very much. Yuan and Yingzi made their way to the tower shortly after. Now that I've decided to participate in the festival, I have to wait 2 years for it to begin. Yuan pondered what he should do in the meantime while they approached the dragon ascending mountain. Sometime later, Yuan and Yingzi reached Dragon Ascending Mountain, but by the time they got there, tens of thousands of beings were already lined up. Once they joined the queue, Yuan took a moment to inspect the towering structure ahead. The Dragon Ascending Mountain was, in reality, just an incredibly tall pillar stretching into the sky. There was an entrance at the base of the tower, but Yuan couldn't quite imagine what lay inside or what purpose it served. He tried looking inside using his divine sense, but an invisible force prevented him from peeking inside. Hey! Amid his thoughts, Yuan suddenly felt someone tugging at his clothes. Oh? He turned to look at Yingzi, who was staring at him. I want to eat the rest of my meat skewers, she said. All right. Yuan pulled out a handful of meat skewers and handed them to Yingzi. The rich, savory scent of the skewers immediately filled the air, catching the attention of everyone in line and even those nearby. Heads turned, and whispers spread as the aroma quickly became the center of attention. What is that smell? My mouth became watery after a single whiff. It's coming from the back of the queue. Look at those meat on sticks in that little girl's hands. What kind of meat is that? I've never smelled anything so delicious before. Someone exclaimed, their voice filled with astonishment. The crowd murmured in agreement, their eyes fixed on the food in Yingzi's grasp. Hey, what the fuck are you trying to pull here? An irritated voice suddenly roared, cutting through the chatter. Yuan shifted his gaze to the man standing directly in front of them in the queue. The man's expression was tense, clearly agitated by something, and his eyes flicked toward Yuan and Yingzi with clear frustration. What do you mean? Yuan calmly inquired. You know what I mean. Why would you pull out something like that without considering your place and situation? Or are you trying to start something on purpose? It's just food, Yuan said with a seemingly innocent expression on his face. Well, it's causing a commotion. Unless you share it with the rest of us, get it out of our faces. What kind of logic is that? I don't see why we need to share it with you. Yuan shook his head and said, you're the one causing a commotion here. Anyway, if it bothers you that much, feel free to take the meat skewers away from her. I won't stop you. Chapter 1652 Dragon Princess Meihui. Chapter 1652 Dragon Princess Meihui. The man glanced at Yingzi, only to be met with a fierce, piercing glare that sent chills through his entire body. Instinctively, he knew that if he dared to make a move for the meat skewers in her hands, it would lead to a swift and terrible demise. Her lack of presence. Is she a shadow dweller? The onlookers pondered Yingzi's identity. After chewing and swallowing the meat in her mouth, Yingzi spoke out loud, I'm willing to exchange my food. Really? The man was pleasantly surprised and his opinions of shadow dwellers slightly improved. However, Yingzi continued, in exchange for one skewer, I will have your life. Not just the man before her but even Yuan and the other onlookers reacted with bafflement. Why you crazy little bitch? I'm gonna fucking kill you. The man roared with an enraged face, and his aura surged with bloodlust. However, right as the man raised his hand, another voice boomed. What is going on here? Who dares to cause a commotion right before the Dragon God Festival? I'll disqualify you on the spot. Everyone there turned to look at the approaching figure. She was a tall beauty with a strict face and an authoritative air around her. Dragon Princess Meihui. The people there lowered their heads when they recognized her identity. Yuan looked at her with interest. In terms of prowess, she seems to be on par with Feng Liqiu. So, what is the problem here? Dragon Princess Meihui glared at Yuan and the man who exuded bloodlust with a deep frown on her face. However, if one looked closely, one would see her eyes glancing at the meat skewers in Yingzi's grasp every few seconds. Dragon Princess Meihui would never admit it, but she couldn't care less about their insignificant drama. What prompted her to show up in the first place was in Yingzi's grasp. Dragon Princess, we were quietly waiting in line when this unreasonable fellow in front of us suddenly became aggressive. Yuan was the first to speak up, and he directly placed all blame on the man. Don't give me that bullshit. You were the ones who provoked us with your food. The man hastily refuted. Yuan shook his head and said, How did we provoke you with our food? I don't recall dangling them in front of your nose and provoking you. Or were you so enticed by the scent that you became offended? Either way, my friend was minding her business when you started yapping about sharing our food without providing any logical reason, and then you got angry when she refused. Yuan turned to look at the Dragon Princess with an apologetic smile. Although it wasn't our intention, it is true that our food was the main cause for the commotion. I hope you can forgive us. Before the Dragon Princess could even open her mouth to respond, Yuan retrieved a handful of meat skewers and shoved them toward her. Please accept our apology. Silence filled the atmosphere while the onlookers were shocked by the implications behind Yuan's actions. That bastard has the audacity to bribe the Dragon Princess so openly? The Dragon Princess stared at the meat skewers with a somewhat dazed face. When she snapped out of it a moment later, she cleared her throat and spoke. Is that so? Don't worry about it. Since eating here is not a crime, you are not responsible for what happened. She turned to look at the man with narrowed eyes and continued, I will only give you a warning. If you continue to make a scene, I will disqualify you from the festival. I understand. I will not disappoint the princess a second time. The man didn't dare to argue back and responded with his head lowered. Then I will take my leave. Just as the dragon princess turned to leave, Yuan spoke again, his tone calm but firm. You haven't accepted my apology yet, princess? He was referring to the meat skewers that were still in his grasp. The dragon princess instantly halted her movements, but her eyebrows were twitching. If you really don't want it, I'll take them back. As Yuan began pulling his arms back, she turned back to Yuan and swiftly accepted the meat skewers. If you insist, I will accept it, she said in a somewhat bashful voice. After accepting the skewers, the dragon princess wasted no time and immediately took a bite. The moment the flavors hit her tongue, her eyes widened in surprise and delight, clearly caught off guard by how delicious the food was. Oh my, this is so delicious. What kind of meat is this? The dragon princess inquired after swallowing. Chicken. What is that? The dragon princess raised an eyebrow in puzzlement as she moved on to the next skewer. It's a kind of bird. Like phoenixes? No, but I guess they're pretty similar. I have eaten phoenixes before, but they don't taste anything like this. The dragon princess shook her head. Before she realized it, the dragon princess had finished all the meat skewers, and a wave of disappointment washed over her. She hadn't expected to enjoy them so much, and now that they were gone, she found herself wishing for more. Her expression softened slightly, though she tried to maintain her composure. She turned to look at Ingzi, who was slowly enjoying the skewers, and sighed inwardly, I should have slowly savored every bite, but alas. Then she shifted her gaze to Yuan's handsome face. After a moment of silence, she cleared her throat and said, Thank you for the food. Was amazing. Can I get your name? I am Yuan. Then Yuan, I'll give you this as a thank you. She suddenly gestured toward the people working at the front of the line. Noticing her signal, one of them quickly rushed over, holding a small token in his hands. This token verifies that you are a participant in the Dragon God Festival. Dragon Princess Meihui grabbed the token and handed it to Yuan. With this, you won't need to wait in line anymore. Yuan gladly accepted the token. Thank you. Chapter 1653 Divine Dragon Council. Chapter 1653 Divine Dragon Council. Then I'll be on my way now. After Yuan had been given the token, Dragon Princess Meihui quickly left the scene. There were two major reasons why Dragon Princess Meihui gave Yuan the token, allowing him to skip the assessment entirely. The first reason was simple. She could tell by Yuan's dragon scent that he was more than qualified to participate, making the assessment process unnecessary and a waste of time. The second reason was because of the meat skewers. If the others in line were forced to endure the enticing aroma for too long, it would likely lead to another commotion. By allowing Yuan to leave early, they would avoid any further disruptions caused by the irresistible scent of the skewers. With the token in his grasp, Yuan and Ingzi left the scene, disappearing into the distance. I guess I don't need to worry about being affiliated with the Divine Dragon Sanctuary for now. Yuan tossed the token into his spatial ring. What are you going to do for the next 2 years? Ingzi asked him. Yuan pondered for several minutes before responding. If the Divine Dragon Sanctuary is as powerful as the Eternal Phoenix Domain, they should have training areas like the 9 levels of hell, right? I should take this time to strengthen myself further and prepare for the festival. But will they allow someone who isn't affiliated with their territory to use these training spots? Ingzi mused. Let's go ask that blue-haired dragon. Ingzi and Yuan made their way back to the blue-haired dragon, who had barely moved from his spot since they left. Yejun, you're back already? Did something happen? The blue-haired man asked them with a puzzled face since it had been less than 2 hours since they left. Yuan shook his head and explained, No, I have the participation token in my possession. I returned because I have some more questions. Already? That place is usually crowded, and it normally takes several weeks to acquire a token unless you skip the queue, the man remarked, his expression filled with surprise. One thing led to another and I somehow managed to skip the line. Yuan smiled. So something did happen. By the way, why are you still here? Oh, I am something like a guide. It's my job to assist visitors like you. There are many first-time visitors because of the Dragon God Festival after all. I see. Anyway, you have some questions, right? I'll try my best to answer them. I'm looking for something to do while I wait for the Dragon God Festival. Are there any training areas available in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary? Yuan asked. Training grounds, huh? There are several, but they are only accessible by those affiliated with the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. How does one become affiliated? You must visit the Divine Dragon Council and pass several assessments. Once you become an affiliate, you will essentially become part of the Divine Dragon Sanctuary's prowess. For example, if our territory is ever threatened, you are obligated to aid us. Can I ask about the assessments? What do they ask for? The Divine Dragon Council will ask about your background to determine whether you are qualified to become an affiliate. So there's a chance I won't qualify, huh? Yes, but I have no reason to believe why you wouldn't qualify. In fact, you're pretty much guaranteed to qualify because you belong to the dragon race. I see. Where is the Divine Dragon Council? In response to Yuan's question, the blue-haired man retrieved a white stone and said, "This will bring you directly to the Divine Dragon Council." This? Yuan accepted the white stone and inspected it with interest. You've never seen a teleport stone before? The man inquired, sounding somewhat surprised. No. They don't exist where I am from. I guess that's not too surprising since they're unique within the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. These teleport stones are created by the Void Dragon, who has the ability to teleport. If you shatter that stone, you will create a rift that will directly bring you to the Divine Dragon Council. Sometime later, Yuan shattered the teleport stone, releasing the energy stored within. The energy surged out, swirling in the air before forming a rift in front of him. The rift will disappear after 10 seconds. The man quickly warned him. Thanks for your help again. Yuan said to him before jumping into the rift, followed by Yingzi. Upon emerging from the rift, Yuan found himself standing before a majestic pagoda, its intricate design far surpassing the one he had seen at Phoenix Ascendancy Plateau. The towering structure was adorned with elaborate carvings and shimmering details, exuding an air of ancient power and significance. Its grandeur made it clear that this was a place of great importance. Just like the Dragon Ascending Mountain, there was a huge line waiting to go inside the pagoda. Fortunately, the line isn't as long. Moreover, it's moving much faster, Yuan thought to himself as he entered the back of the line. As they waited in line, Yuan listened to the conversations around them. Hopefully I qualify as a Divine Dragon Warrior. That would make life much easier in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Unless you are a dragon or have a master-level bloodline, it's near impossible to become a Divine Dragon Warrior. He'll be satisfied with just being affiliated with the Divine Dragon Sanctuary since having a higher rank also means having more responsibility. So what if I have more responsibility? Only Divine Dragon Warriors are allowed to use their training grounds, and that is my sole reason for coming here. After overhearing the nearby conversation, Yuan began to wonder if being affiliated with the Divine Dragon Sanctuary was similar to joining a faction in the Nine Heavens since there appeared to be ranks amongst those affiliated. I need to become at least a Divine Dragon Warrior to use their training grounds, huh? Yuan mused inwardly. Sometime later, he looked at Yingzi and asked, "Are you also going to become an affiliate?" Chapter 1654 Divine Dragon Council 2. Chapter 1654 Divine Dragon Council 2. I don't really have a reason to join the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Yingzi shook her head. Most people join the Divine Dragon Sanctuary for one of two reasons. Some sought access to the powerful training grounds available within the territory, hoping to grow stronger. Others join to use the Divine Dragon Sanctuary's prestigious name as a shield, gaining protection and influence under its banner. I do not care about their training grounds and I don't need their protection, so I don't really benefit from joining them. However, if you were to remain in the Primal Expanse forever, I wouldn't mind joining them with you. Yuan smiled at her words and said, "Unfortunately, I must return to my home soon." I know. That's why I won't join them. Also, I am what most consider free-spirited. I don't wish to be constrained by their rules. It won't matter to you who will be leaving soon, but it's a big deal for those living in the Primal Expanse. I see. After a moment of silence, Yuan spoke again. This just crossed my mind, but do Shadow Dwellers also have their own territory? She nodded. We do. It's a small and remote territory somewhere in the Hollowed Expanse, where sunlight doesn't exist. Yuan's eyes widened at this information and he said, I know of the Hollowed Expanse. But I never got the chance to see it for myself for the same reasons I didn't visit the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. The Primal Expanse was composed of many smaller regions, each with its own distinct environment, power structures, and unique inhabitants. These regions varied greatly from fiery domains to shadowy realms. One such region was the Hollowed Expanse, a world shrouded in eternal darkness, where no sunlight ever touched the land. The creatures and powers that thrived there were adapted to the shadows, such as the shadow dwellers. Since shadow dwellers are born from shadows, most of them originated from the hollowed expanse. In this realm of eternal darkness, the lack of sunlight and the pervasive gloom created the perfect conditions for these beings to come into existence. What kind of place is the hallowed expanse? Yuan asked a moment later. Ingzi recalled her memories of the hollowed expanse and said, "It's a gloomy place with hardly any living trees and plants. The land is mostly sand and dirt and not many primals venture there. If we want food we have to leave the region." Based on Yingzi's description, Yuan imagined the hollowed expanse as a vast desert, barren and desolate, where it was always nighttime. "That's why I left the hallowed expanse in the first place, even if it means weakening myself," Ingzi continued. Since shadow and darkness were the sources of shadow dwellers' power, they preferred to stay in the darkest places, where their abilities were at their peak. For Ingzi, leaving the hollowed expanse, the darkest place in the primal expanse, significantly weakened her. The line moved quickly as they chatted, and before Yuan realized it, they had reached the front, now standing directly in front of the towering pagoda. Whenever someone exited the pagoda, it was immediately clear whether they had succeeded or not. Those who had a badge pinned to their chest wore expressions of pride or relief, while those without a badge left empty-handed, often looking disappointed or frustrated. Eventually it was Yuan's turn. Noticing the woman standing by the entrance beckoning toward him, Yuan stepped forward and approached the pagoda. "You can wait for me out here," Yuan said to Ingzi as he left. Sometime later Yuan entered the first floor of the pagoda. The interior was modestly decorated, with minimal furnishings. At the far end of the room, a young man sat behind a desk, his posture relaxed. When the young man noticed Yuan's scent, he raised an eyebrow and asked in a surprised tone, "What dragon bloodline do you have?" "My dragon bloodline?" Yuan swallowed nervously. Fortunately he had prepared for this question. "I'm an Azure dragon." When Yuan considered his identity as a dragon, his first thought was to claim he hailed from the Shi family's heritage. However, he quickly realized that he had never actually learned the name of their bloodline. In the end he used the Azure dragon's name. "An Azure dragon? That can't be right," the young man replied, his brow furrowing in doubt. "I can tell by your scent alone that you come from a much more prestigious bloodline. Are you trying to hide your identity?" "What? If you want to become affiliated with our Divine Dragon Sanctuary, you must tell us the truth. We don't accept those with ulterior motives." "I didn't think he would see through me so easily." Yuan sighed inwardly. He responded a moment later, "Actually, I don't know my race. I was abandoned when I was young, and the ones who accepted and raised me were Azure dragons." The young man narrowed his gaze at Yuan. "Where are you from?" "I'm from a remote and insignificant territory located on the other side of the primal expanse," Yuan revealed, his tone calm and sincere. "What is your reason for wanting to join our Divine Dragon Sanctuary?" "My parents have always spoken highly of the Divine Dragon Sanctuary even though they've never been here," Yuan swiftly responded. "They also recommended that I come here once they are no longer in this world." "What a load of bullshit," the young man sneered inwardly at Yuan's excuses. However, even though he knew that Yuan wasn't being truthful, he couldn't ignore Yuan's powerful bloodline. "I don't know what he's planning, but we can figure out his true identity through the assessment." Sometime later the young man smiled at Yuan and said, "All right, you pass. Moreover, I believe you have the potential to become someone greater than a divine dragon warrior, so I'm going to give you a chance. Head to the second floor and take the assessment there. If you pass, you'll become a divine dragon commander instead of a mere divine dragon warrior. Be proud. You're only the fourth to be sent to the second floor in the last 1,000 years. Join privilege for VIP chaps. Chapter 1655 Divine Dragon Council, 3? Chapter 1655 Divine Dragon Council, 3? Huh? That's it? Yuan thought, surprised by how easy the process had been. He had expected the assessment to be much more difficult and strict, but in reality, it had turned out to be far simpler than he had anticipated. Then he'll head to the second floor now. Yuan gave the young man a slight bow before approaching the spiraling staircase by the wall. Several moments later Yuan stepped onto the second floor. The layout and decorations were almost identical to those on the first floor. At the other end of the room, a middle-aged man was slumped over a desk, seemingly asleep. His posture was relaxed, and his soft, rhythmic breathing filled the otherwise quiet room. Yuan didn't say anything and approached the desk. Suddenly, without opening his eyes, the middle-aged man spoke. It's been 200 years since someone was sent up here. A moment later, the man slowly opened his eyes and sat up, his calm gaze immediately locking onto Yuan. I see why you were sent up here. You have a strong bloodline. Thank you. The middle-aged man then spoke. In order to qualify as a divine dragon commander, you must demonstrate a certain level of prowess, and your bloodline must be at least commander quality. In the Primal Expanse, bloodlines are ranked in the following order: Primal, Master, Commander, Emperor, and Monarch. Each rank signifies a major increase in potential and influence. Monarch quality bloodlines sit at the very pinnacle, and only supreme beings like the Dragon God, Primordial Phoenix, and Primal Monarch possess such powerful bloodlines. The middle-aged man retrieved a finger-sized needle and tossed it to Yuan. Feed it your blood, he instructed. Yuan didn't act right away. Instead, he stared at the needle in silence for a moment, as there was a good chance this would expose his identity. The next moment, Yuan pricked his finger with the needle, and it immediately absorbed his blood. 954, what are you thinking so deeply about? The middle-aged man suddenly inquired when he noticed Yuan's hesitancy. Nothing important. It's just that I've never seen anything like this before and was wondering what it does. Yuan said with an innocent smile. Where did you come from to have never seen that before? It tests the quality of your bloodline. The middle-aged man briefly explained. I see. The next moment, Yuan pricked his finger with the needle, and it immediately absorbed his blood. Once the needle had consumed enough of Yuan's blood, it began to glow faintly with a green light. In a matter of moments, the color shifted rapidly from green to blue, then to red, before finally settling into a glistening silver. The middle-aged man's eyes widened with shock. Cue quickly. Let me see it. He hastily urged. Yuan nodded and gave the needle to him, who inspected it with a serious expression on his face. My eyes are not deceiving me. You actually have an emperor-quality bloodline? The middle-aged man stood up and shifted his gaze from the needle to Yuan, his eyes burning with excitement. What sort of bloodline do you have? Yuan was inwardly relieved that the needle only revealed the quality of his bloodline and nothing more. I don't know, he responded a moment later. What do you mean by that? I grew up without my parents. Is that so? The middle-aged man muttered, his tone laced with skepticism as he eyed the glowing needle. While he clearly doubted Yuan's background, he didn't outright deny it either. After all, given how chaotic the Primal Expanse was, Yuan's claim was entirely possible, even common. In a realm where powerful bloodlines often mingled and mysterious origins were not unheard of, the idea of someone like Yuan emerging from obscurity wasn't out of the question. Alright, you passed this assessment. Congratulations, you're the second to pass the second floor in the last 1,000 years. What about assessing my prowess? Yuan asked. You'll be doing that on the next floor. Although your cultivation is lacking, I don't doubt you have immense potential as someone with an emperor-quality bloodline, so there's a very good chance you'll qualify as a divine dragon commander even if you fail the next assessment. Alright. Then he'll head to the next floor now. Shortly after Yuan left the second floor, the middle-aged man noticed the needle was still glowing. That's strange. Why is it still active? Right as he muttered these words, the needle abruptly changed colors again. This is? He gasped, his face pale with shock. He dropped the needle and stumbled backward, falling onto his buttocks. The silver needle was now glowing a brilliant golden color. A golden glow. He whispered in disbelief, fully aware of the significance of such a sight. No, this can't be possible. The middle-aged man shook his head in disbelief before staring at the golden needle for a moment longer. Then he pulled out something that worked like a communication jade slip and started speaking into it. Meanwhile, Yuan had just reached the third floor, only to find it completely empty except for 2 words painted on the wall that read, "Be patient." After seeing the words, Yuan patiently waited for the interviewer to show up. There's a formation in the center of the room. Yuning suddenly notified him. She continued after examining it. It appears to be a teleport formation. Yuan smiled as he sat on the floor and patiently waited for the interviewer to show up. Unbeknownst to Yuan, the Divine Dragon Sanctuary was in a commotion, stirred by a piece of specific information that spread like wildfire amongst the upper ranks. What? A new descendant of the Dragon God showed up? How is that even possible? The Dragon God should only have 3 descendants. Perhaps he conceived another one in secret. That's highly unlikely. Where's the supposed 4th descendant? According to Counselor Luo, he's currently on the 3rd floor of the Divine Dragon Hall. How long has it been since someone made it to the 3rd floor? Who's going to do the assessment? I heard the interviewer has already been decided. About 15 minutes had passed since Yuan began waiting for his interviewer to show up when the teleportation formation suddenly flickered to life, and a handsome young man with a dignified and commanding presence emerged from it. Chapter 1656 Long Yejun. Chapter 1656 Long Yejun. After appearing on the 3rd floor, the handsome young man approached Yuan with a calm smile. "Hello. I hope you didn't wait too long." Yuan quickly stood up and said, "No, I didn't." The young man then introduced himself. "I am Long Yejun and I will be your interviewer. Before we begin, can you tell me about yourself?" "I'm Yuan and I traveled here from the other side of the Primal Expanse. I grew up in a small territory with 2 Azure dragons who I consider my parents. Unfortunately, I don't know my real parents." "I see." Long Yejun mumbled with a ponderous face. Sometime later he looked at Yuan with a serious expression and said, "To be honest, based on the assessment from the 2nd floor, we believe you may have a connection to the Dragon God." "What?" Yuan's eyes widened with surprise after hearing this unexpected news. "When you say Dragon God, do you mean the master of the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, that Dragon God?" Long Yejun nodded. "Indeed." Yuan wore a dazed look on his face as he pondered how such a thing was possible inwardly. "I may be related to the Dragon God? That's ridiculous. I don't recall ever meeting him even as Tianyi, so how is it possible that we're related?" Long Yejun stared intently at Yuan's face, carefully analyzing every detail as if searching for something hidden beneath the surface. He's genuinely surprised by the information. Maybe he really has no idea that he has the Dragon God's blood within him, and it was pure coincidence that he came to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, he wondered inwardly. After a brief moment of silence, Yuan's expression shifted, as though a sudden realization had dawned on him. The blood cleansing ceremony. He gained the ability to transform after the blood cleansing ceremony at the ancient dragon city, and the Shi family claimed they were unaware of the origin of the blood he absorbed. However, the system had confirmed that the blood belonged to the Dragon God. That expression, "Did you remember something?" Long Yejun inquired with a slight smile on his face. Before Yuan could respond, he continued, "Anyway, I am not here to question your bloodline. We can do that after the assessment. For this assessment, I will be evaluating your combat prowess. The most effective way to do that is through a sparring match with you." Long Yejun suddenly suppressed his cultivation to perfect chaotic master, matching Yuan's cultivation. "You will pass this assessment if you can injure me even slightly," he said afterward. "Are you sure?" Yuan asked. "Yes. And take as much time as you need to prepare." Yuan didn't say anything else and became silent. How should I go about this? He wondered inwardly. He could easily injure this confident interviewer with number 1 under heaven, but he was pretending to be a dragon, and very few beings in the Primal Expanse used weapons. Moreover, he wanted to test out something. Sometime later Yuan said, "All right, I am ready." Long Yejun beckoned with a provocative gesture, saying, "Show me what you've got." In the next instant, Yuan sprang from the ground, hurtling toward Long Yejun with incredible speed. Relentless Dragon overwhelms the 9 heavens. As Yuan activated his fist technique, he channeled his chaotic essence into it, amplifying its power several times over. Long Yejun's eyes widened as Yuan's aura suddenly erupted with overwhelming force. Instinctively he leaped back, attempting to dodge the oncoming strike. However, Yuan suddenly activated Dragon's Gaze, catching Long Yejun completely off guard. The technique paralyzed him for a split second, leaving him vulnerable. Long Yejun couldn't even utter a word before Yuan's fist, engulfed in a black aura that resembled flames, slammed into his gut, launching him across the room. His body crashed into the wall with such force that the entire building trembled. If not for the defensive formations reinforcing the structure, his impact would have shattered through the wall entirely. Despite the brutal blow, Long Yejun somehow managed to land on his feet, his expression grim but composed as he steadied himself. He took a deep breath, then forcefully blew his nose, expelling a fair amount of blood. Long Yejun stared at his own blood on the ground, then chuckled with excitement. "When was the last time I saw my own blood?" "Ha ha ha." He laughed, a wild glint in his eyes. "Does this mean I passed the assessment?" Yuan asked. Long Yejun stopped laughing to look at him with a solemn gaze. "No," he responded. "But you, That wasn't enough to injure me. Yuan didn't say anything and merely looked at the blood on the floor. Ahem. Long Yejun awkwardly cleared his throat and explained, I was training before I came here, and that blood was accumulated then. Yuan shook his head inwardly and responded with a bittersweet smile, I understand. Let's continue then. A satisfied smile appeared on Long Yejun's face as he settled into a combative stance, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. After a brief moment of stillness, Long Yejun made the first move, using a movement technique to instantly get in front of Yuan. Yuan reacted swiftly, but as he raised his arms to defend, Long Yejun's eyes gleamed with a golden light. Dragon's gaze? Yuan was caught off guard by Long Yejun's dragon's gaze and became momentarily stunned. Payback time. Long Yejun laughed as he drove his fist into Yuan's stomach, precisely where he had been struck moments earlier. Yuan was instantly sent flying, crashing into the wall with even greater force than when he had struck Long Yejun. The impact reverberated through the room, shaking the entire building. Yet it was Long Yejun who bore the brunt of the damage from the exchange. His hand was bruised and slightly bleeding, while Yuan emerged seemingly unscathed. Fuck. What is your body made of? Long Yejun cried out, shaking his hand in an attempt to dispel the pain, disbelief written across his face. Chapter 1657 Endless Arena? Chapter 1657 Endless Arena. Although Yuan appeared unscathed on the outside, he hadn't emerged from the exchange completely uninjured. Beneath his calm exterior, the impact had taken a slight toll on his body, but his regenerative ability swiftly healed the damage, allowing him to recover almost instantly. I cannot underestimate this man. Not only did he penetrate my defenses with his bare fists, but he's even restricted his cultivation to my level. Yuan stared at Long Yejun with a sharp gaze. Unbeknownst to him, an excited smile crept onto his face, giving him a fierce and almost vicious appearance. When Long Yejun saw Yuan's expression, he also grinned excitedly. I see. So you're just like me. This is going to be fun. Ah. However, this place is too small and restrictive for us to really go all out. Long Yejun tossed a teleport stone to Yuan and said, let's change our location to somewhere more suitable. Before Yuan could even respond, Long Yejun crushed his own teleport stone and disappeared from the room. Yuan didn't think too much about it and also crushed the teleport stone the next moment. After being teleported, Yuan found himself in a vast land that seemed to have been artificially flattened. The ground was smooth and level, resembling the surface of a grand arena prepared for battle, and it stretched endlessly toward the horizon, its sheer size almost overwhelming. Welcome to the Endless Arena, Long Yejun said, gesturing to the vast expanse around them. This is the largest arena in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, spanning over 100,000 miles. We won't have to worry about slamming into walls and whatnot here. Whenever you're ready. Long Yejun gestured to Yuan a moment later. After a moment of stillness, Yuan made the first move. However, this time, Long Yejun had no intention of letting Yuan land a hit so easily and swiftly countered with a move of his own. When they clashed, a powerful ripple surged through the arena, as if two colossal mountains had collided, sending shockwaves across the vast expanse and shaking the ground beneath them. Each of their punches was so powerful that it generated a fierce gust of wind, while every kick unleashed small windstorms, the sheer force of their battle reshaping the air around them. In addition to their fists and legs, they also unleashed Dragon's Gaze on each other whenever possible. However, now that they were both fully aware of each other's capabilities, neither of them was caught off guard, skillfully countering the other's Dragon's Gaze with their own. How is he canceling out my dragon's authority? Long Yejun thought in disbelief. Even though I've suppressed my cultivation, my soul strength should still be vastly superior. Meanwhile, Yuan was focusing all his efforts on breaking through Long Yejun's mental defenses, but no matter how hard he tried, he found himself unable to penetrate them. We're pretty evenly matched at this moment, but neither of us is truly going all out. Since it was rare for Yuan to encounter an opponent equal in strength, he took this moment to savor the fight. In fact, he had already forgotten about the assessment entirely, lost in the thrill of the battle. Long Yejun felt the same way. Even if he suppressed his cultivation to match his opponent, only a handful of people in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary could even land a hit on him, let alone rival him in strength. What was your name again? Long Yejun suddenly asked. Yuan. Allow me to introduce myself again. I am Long Yejun, a descendant of the dragon god. Since you also have the dragon god's blood in you, that makes you my younger brother. How many children does the dragon god have? Yuan asked as they continued fighting. We always thought there were only 3 of us, but with your sudden appearance there are now 4 of us. I am the second eldest. The second eldest, huh? No wonder why you're so strong. Yuan laughed out loud. If I am strong, what are you, the youngest? Your cultivation may be low, but your prowess does not match your cultivation in the slightest, being several realms stronger. Just to fight with you on an equal footing, I had to increase my cultivation to intermediate chaotic commander. Long Yejun admitted that had increased his cultivation just to match Yuan's prowess. As Yuan and Long Yejun continued their intense battle, nearby beings began to take notice. Given the vast size of the endless arena, it was common for multiple individuals to use it simultaneously, typically without paying attention to others. However, the sheer ferocity of Yuan and Long Yejun's fight was impossible to ignore, compelling onlookers to steal glances and witness the spectacle unfolding before them. Huh? Isn't that Prince Yejun? Who is his opponent? I don't recognize him. I don't recognize him, but he's fighting with Prince Yejun on equal footing while having a lower cultivation. What in Dragon God's name is going on? One of the onlookers exclaimed in disbelief, unable to comprehend how someone could rival Long Yejun, a descendant of the Dragon God. Wait a second. I heard rumors about a 4th descendant showing up very recently. Is that him? The Dragon God's 4th descendant looks extremely promising. He might even rival the eldest, that tyrant. Impossible. Nobody can rival that tyrant, who is the closest to reaching the Dragon God's prowess. Anyway, Prince Yejun is obviously holding back. If he became serious, the 4th won't be able to fight back. I wouldn't be so sure about that. It seems to me the 4th is also holding back. Time will tell. More and more people began showing up at the endless arena to watch Yuan and Long Yejun's fight once word of it spread. As the fight progressed, both Yuan and Long Yejun grew more serious, gradually revealing more of their true strength. That should be enough for a warm-up. Let's get serious now. Long Yejun suddenly stopped fighting and said, "Fine by me." Yuan nodded, agreeing with him. Chapter 1658 Dragon God's Descendant? Chapter 1658 Dragon God's Descendant. Yuan and Long Yejun silently stared at each other, seeming waiting for the other to act first. If you're not going to move first, then allow me to. Long Yejun suddenly began transforming. His aura erupted like a volcano, and scales began appearing all over his body. Furthermore, a golden mask that was shaped like a dragon's face materialized on Long Yejun's face, giving him a fearsome presence. Seeing this, Yuan used God of War's astral arts, but he restricted the avatar's size to be only slightly larger than his own body. What is that? Long Yejun murmured, staring at the avatar with awe and intrigue, as had never seen a technique like that before. It was not just Long Yejun. The onlookers were also baffled by God of War's astral arts, a unique technique unlike anything they've seen before. Why are you just standing there? Let's go. Yuan made the first move a moment later when Long Yejun only stood there in silence. Long Yejun quickly snapped out of his daze to block Yuan's strike before countering with his own. Long Yejun's speed and power had significantly increased since his transformation. As for Yuan, not only did he become stronger, but he also grew another pair of arms, allowing him to attack more frequently. After their power-up, each of their punches and kicks would create powerful windstorms and cause violent earthquakes. What is going on here? A new onlooker showed up after being attracted by the commotion. Princess Meihui. The others bowed to her after recognizing her. The Dragon Prince is currently sparring with the 4th Dragon God Descendant. Someone filled her in on the situation. Huh? My brother? And what do you mean 4th Dragon God Descendant? Dragon Princess Meihui raised her eyebrows in a puzzled manner. This was her first time hearing this news. You haven't heard? This person managed to reach the 2nd floor of the Divine Dragon Council, and when his bloodline was tested, it was revealed he had the Dragon God's blood within him. It's been spreading around like crazy. This is my first time hearing about it. Princess Meihui shook her head. She narrowed her focus at the figure fighting with her brother, Long Yejun. When she saw Yuan's face and recognized him, her eyes widened with shock. He's the 4th Dragon God Descendant? No way. She exclaimed. What? You know him? We've met and even spoken very recently. However, I can't say that I know him. To think he'd have dragon god's blood in him? What kind of coincidence is this? Princess Meihui sighed out loud. It's just a rumor for now since they haven't confirmed if he is truly the dragon god's fourth descendant. Princess Meihui shook her head and said, It's likely true since I felt a strange connection with him when we first met. Although it was subtle, it was still there. I didn't think much of it back then and even ignored it. No way, so he might really be the fourth dragon god's descendant? The others were speechless. In the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, those who were affiliated followed a strict ranking structure. This hierarchy determined not only status but also privileges and responsibilities, with higher-ranked individuals holding greater authority and access to powerful resources, while the lower ranks strove to prove themselves worthy of advancement. The majority of affiliates within the Divine Dragon Sanctuary do not possess a rank, making even the lowest rank a position of immense authority. The lowest rank within the Divine Dragon Sanctuary was the Divine Dragon Warrior, entrusted with maintaining order within the territory. They also served as the first line of defense and enforcers of the territory's peace. Above them were the Divine Dragon Commanders, responsible for leading and directing the Divine Dragon Warriors. They were akin to generals in the military. Only 100 Divine Dragon Commanders existed in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, while hundreds of thousands of Divine Dragon Warriors exist. The next and highest attainable rank was the Divine Dragon Council. Comprised of fewer than a dozen individuals, the members of the council wielded the greatest authority within the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, second only to the Dragon God and his descendants. They were entrusted with making crucial decisions and overseeing the sanctuary's most important matters. Although the Divine Dragon Council was the highest rank, there was a rank even higher than them, reserved only for the Dragon God's offspring, the Dragon God's descendants. Has the Dragon God commented on the situation? Princess Meihui asked the ones around her. No, but the Dragon God should have been notified already. Meihui looked toward the sky and mumbled, Father? Yuan and Long Yejun continued their battle for 2 days straight without a moment of rest. Both had long forgotten about the assessment, fully absorbed in the thrill of the fight, pushing each other to their limits as they exchanged relentless blows. Neither seemed willing to back down, their stamina and determination seemingly boundless. You're really something, Yuan. I haven't been entertained to this extent in a very long time. However, I can tell that you're still holding back. Show me everything you've got. Are you sure? Don't complain if you get hurt. Ah, of course. I won't complain even if you kill me by accident. Long Yejun laughed out loud. Then allow me to show you my true strength. Yuan's aura suddenly surged, transforming into something more refined and razor-sharp, resembling the cutting edge of a sword. Long Yejun halted his movement and even subconsciously backed away from Yuan after sensing his enhanced sword aura. What is that power? Long Yejun muttered in astonishment. Everyone watching was equally bewildered by Yuan's sword aura. The sharp, otherworldly energy left them in awe, unable to comprehend its origin or nature. I am not done yet. After releasing his enhanced sword aura, Yuan imbued it with his chaotic essence. Boom. The sword aura instantly intensified several times, almost reaching the realm of supreme sword aura in terms of prowess. Chapter 1659 Chaotic Sword Aura. Chapter 1659 Chaotic Sword Aura. Oh, this is not bad. Much better than I anticipated. Yuan nodded in satisfaction, impressed by the result of fusing his chaotic essence with his enhanced sword aura. What is that power? Long Yejun asked again. Yuan pondered for a moment before responding, Chaotic Sword Aura. He decided to give his sword aura a new name. Chaotic Sword Aura, what a fearsome technique. Long Yejun swallowed nervously. Despite the distance between them, it felt as though his body was being assaulted by countless invisible blades. Had his physique been any weaker, Yuan's aura alone would have been enough to kill him on the spot. In fact, a sizable 500-meter-long crater had formed around Yuan. His chaotic sword aura was so sharp and overwhelming that his mere presence had obliterated everything around him. Here I come, Yuan warned Long Yejun before he swung his arm in a chopping motion. A black-colored sword light was created from the motion and flew at Long Yejun. Long Yejun was barely able to react and narrowly dodged it, or so he thought. After sensing what felt like a drop of water flowing down his face, Long Yejun awkwardly reached for his face. This is. When he looked at his fingers, they were stained by his own blood. Long Yejun trembled at the sight of his own blood. It had been so long since someone had managed to penetrate his scales that he couldn't remember the last time it happened. This sensation, this thrill that I am feeling. A crazed expression appeared on Long Yejun's face as he licked his blood-stained fingers. Ha 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 ha. Long Yejun's aura suddenly skyrocketed, piercing straight through the heavens. Let me enjoy this some more, you, brother Yuan. Long Yejun charged at Yuan. Yuan also wore a wide smile on his face as he faced Long Yejun head-on. Boom. When they clashed, Yuan's chaotic sword aura scattered in every direction, carving deep sword cuts into the surrounding area. Long Yejun, who stood directly in front of Yuan, bore the brunt of the scattered sword aura with his bare body. Sword cuts appeared all over Long Yejun's body, quickly drenching him in blood. However, despite the severity of the sight, the wounds were superficial, no more than paper cuts. Within moments, his naturally strong body healed all the sword cuts. My turn. Long Yejun opened his mouth, and a bright orb of light suddenly began to form inside, glowing with intense energy as it rapidly grew in size and brilliance. Yuan's instincts warned him of the impending danger, but he found himself unable to move when he tried to dodge as Long Yejun held tightly onto his wrists. Long Yejun had deliberately closed the distance between them, enduring Yuan's previous attack directly with his body, all in order to capture him and prevent his escape. Dragon's Breath. Once he gathered enough energy, Long Yejun unleashed it from his mouth, shooting a beam of light resembling heaven's splitting sword strike, even rivaling its destructiveness. Yuan's entire body was swallowed by the massive beam of light, his silhouette disappearing completely within its blinding brilliance. Long Yejun kept his mouth open, continuously releasing the dragon's breath until every last ounce of energy had been expended. It took several long seconds before Long Yejun finally closed his mouth. When the dragon's breath attack was complete, it left a path of utter devastation in its wake, and Yuan was nowhere to be seen. Shit. Did I accidentally kill him? Long Yejun muttered in a dazed manner after snapping out of his frenzied state. A tsunami of worry and guilt washed over Long Yejun as he realized what had just done. He frantically scanned the devastated area, his heart pounding anxiously, dreading the worst outcome. Wow, that was scary. I almost died there. A familiar voice suddenly resounded, prompting Long Yejun to turn around. Yuan was standing right behind him, seemingly unscathed. However, he was naked since all of his clothes and equipment were destroyed by the attack. Thank the dragon god you're alive. Long Yejun exclaimed, feeling a surge of relief wash over him when he saw Yuan had survived his brutal attack. He let out a shaky breath, realizing just how close he'd come to a tragic mistake. He wouldn't have known what to do if he had accidentally killed Yuan. Do you still want to continue? Yuan asked, seemingly eager to continue fighting despite his near-death experience. Long Yejun shook his head with a bittersweet smile and said, No, let's stop here. He continued, It's embarrassing considering my status and experience, but I tend to lose control when I get too excited in a fight. Anyway, I'm glad you're safe. This is my loss. Yuan smiled and dismissively waved his hand. Don't worry about it. I know how you feel since it also happens to me. But how did you survive? I'm certain my dragon's breath landed on you since I could still feel the sensation of your wrist after I released it. Long Yejun suddenly asked. It did hit me and it even destroyed most of my body. What? But you look perfectly fine. I'm quite confident in my regenerative abilities. Yuan smiled. Although Long Yejun was too preoccupied to see it, the onlookers had witnessed Yuan reconstructing his entire body from a single cell, which left them all astonished, even terrified. Sometime later, Yuan retrieved the golden dragon robe and wore it. Thank the heavens I didn't wear this during the battle or it would have been destroyed. Yuan sighed inwardly. Unfortunately, the rest of Yuan's equipment had been utterly obliterated by Long Yejun's dragon's breath. Among the losses were the treasured armor and boots that had once belonged to the evil god, which he had only recently acquired. These two treasures had endured thousands of years of abuse and even survived one of the biggest wars in the divine heaven. Yet, they were somehow destroyed so soon after returning to Yuan's possession. Stygian vest and Stygian boots? What a pity. Yuan muttered in a gloomy tone. Realizing that had destroyed Yuan's treasures, Long Yejun said, Sorry, I also destroyed your valuables. It's fine. At least they were destroyed in a battle. They were also quite old and worn out anyway. No, it's not fine. I will compensate you fully. I promise. Long Yejun said with a heartfelt face. Yuan nodded, acknowledging his sincerity. Chapter 1660 Ancient Azure Dragon. Chapter 1660 Ancient Azure Dragon. Sometime after their fight ended, Long Yejun said to Yuan, although you have passed the assessment, it never mattered since you're one of the Dragon God's descendants, so you will automatically be ranked above the Divine Dragon Council. Oh. Yuan wondered if he should follow the flow and pretend to be a Dragon God's descendant. If the Dragon God is as powerful as the Primordial Phoenix, there's a good chance he will be able to see through me, so the longer I continue to impersonate his offspring, the worse things will get for me. However, if I reveal myself now, who knows how Long Yejun and the others will react. After some serious pondering, Yuan decided to continue acting as one of the Dragon God's descendants to take advantage of their training grounds for as long as possible. Even if his identity were exposed later by the Dragon God, Yuan was confident that the Primal Monarch wouldn't allow any real harm to come to him. Hey, we meet again. A familiar voice suddenly resounded, prompting Yuan to turn his head. Princess Meihui. Yuan acknowledged her with a nod. There's no need for such formality between us siblings. Allow me to introduce myself again. I am Long Meihui, the youngest of the Dragon God's descendant. Long Meihui said with a beautiful smile on her face. I'm Yuan. He'll call you Brother Yuan from now on, so you should call me Sister Meihui. Elder sister is fine too. Long Meihui chuckled blissfully. Although she was the youngest, she was still billions of years old, so one could imagine her happiness in finally becoming an elder sister. I am finally an elder sister. I am no longer the youngest. Wow. I thought this day would never come. Long Meihui laughed out loud. She was so happy that she began crying a moment later. By the way, Yuan suddenly spoke, can I still participate in the Dragon God Festival as the Dragon God's descendant? Of course. Well, also be participating. Long Yejun nodded. I see. That's great. Are you participating because there's something you want to accomplish? Can you tell us? Maybe we can help you right now. Long Meihui suddenly said. As one of the Dragon God's descendant, there was very little they couldn't achieve in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary. Yuan nodded and said, a close friend of mine is cursed, and I need the power of the Sacred Chalice of Purification to cure him. The Sacred Chalice of Purification, huh? If you can bring your friend to the Divine Dragon Sanctuary, we can help him. Long Yejun said. Yuan shook his head and sighed, unfortunately my friend cannot leave his territory, so I have to bring the treasure to him. That would be difficult to do since the Sacred Chalice of Purification hasn't left the Divine Dragon Sanctuary since it was brought here. Long Meihui said. But if you win the Dragon God Festival, you can make that request to the Dragon God. Long Yejun continued. That's what I plan on doing, Yuan said. Good luck, Brother Yuan. Although we've participated in nearly every Dragon God Festival since its creation many billion years ago, we've only won a few times. Long Meihui said. What kind of trials are in the festival? Yuan asked. All kinds, from trials that test your talent to nonsensical ones like racing each other across the Primal Expanse. Long Yejun said. Racing across the Primal Expanse? How long did that take to finish? Yuan asked nervously. A few hundred years. Oh. Yuan immediately became worried after hearing that the festival may potentially last for hundreds of years. What's the shortest time a festival has ever lasted? He asked a moment later. The shortest festival happened 750 million years ago. I believe that one ended in just a few minutes. Long Yejun said after pondering for a few moments. I remember that one. It was a ridiculous trial that required us to catch a primal prepared by the Dragon God. The eldest caught it in less than 3 minutes. Long Meihui sighed as she recalled the events of that day. Anyway, Brother Yuan, are you free now? I want to compensate you for the valuables that I destroyed. Long Yejun suddenly said. I'm free now. Yuan nodded. Great. Take this. Long Yejun tossed another teleport stone to him. I'll see you later. Long Meihui said to him before flying away. Sometime later, Yuan crushed the teleport stone and entered the rift, followed by Long Yejun. When they emerged from the rift, Yuan found himself standing before a beautiful pavilion with a pond built around it. Where are we? He asked. Long Yejun smiled and said, the Silver Pavilion. When Long Yejun approached the pavilion, another portal appeared. This is just the entrance to my real home. Once they entered the portal, Yuan found himself surrounded by an endless, shimmering sea that was completely motionless, like water in a still cup. He stood on a long silver bridge that stretched out toward a distant island, where a large house was situated. "What do you think of my world?" Long Yejun asked for his impressions. Yuan looked around for a moment before responding, "I can see that you like water." Long Yejun laughed at his response. He then said, "I'm actually a water dragon, an ancient Azure dragon." "A water dragon? I thought you were a land dragon with how well you fought on land." Yuan was surprised to learn this. Long Yejun smiled and said, "If we had fought near the ocean, even near a small pond, I wouldn't have lost to you. Water dragons could only unleash their true potential when fighting near or within water, so Long Yejun had been severely handicapped during his battle with Yuan." "I wouldn't be so sure about that," Yuan said provocatively. "Do you want to find out?" Long Yejun's aura suddenly surged, causing the still water around them to tremble with excitement. However, before Yuan could even respond, Long Yejun retracted his aura and chuckled, "I'm just joking with you. Follow me. I'll bring you to my living quarters." Yuan silently nodded, maintaining a composed expression, though inwardly, he was startled by Long Yejun's aura just now, which was incomparably stronger than when they had fought. "If we really fought here, I have only about a 20% chance of winning," he sighed inwardly. Chapter 1661 Long Yejun's Treasures. Chapter 1661 Long Yejun's Treasures. After walking for several minutes, they finally arrived at the island. "Welcome to my humble home," Long Yejun said to Yuan as he opened the door. "Though, this is just my secondary home that I only use when I am in my human form. My real home is the water outside." The interior of the house was incredibly simple. There was only one large room with a couch, a square table for chairs and some wall decorations. "What do you typically do here?" Yuan asked out of curiosity. "This." Long Yejun suddenly sprawled out on the couch, his entire body stretched across it with one foot casually hanging off the edge. "What am I looking at?" Yuan didn't want to make any assumptions and asked. "You can't tell?" "I'm relaxing." Yuan was speechless. Although the human form is very restricting and weak, it has its advantages. The biggest one is their ease of movement and small size. "I wouldn't be able to do this if I were in my true form," Long Yejun said. "I see." Speaking of human form, Long Yejun sat up and stared at Yuan with a serious face. "Your appearance is top-notch. Did you acquire it from the human face artisan?" "Human face artisan?" Yuan wore a puzzled look on his face. "You don't know the human face artisan? He's one of the top appearance makers in this world. Although his products are extremely expensive, they're all top quality. In fact, most of the top quality appearances are created by him, mine included." "Is that so?" "Anyway, to answer your question, I didn't acquire my face from him. I made it myself." "What? You made such a high-quality appearance by yourself? You should start a business with that talent. The human face artisan will finally have some real competition." "I'll think about it," Yuan said with a stiff smile. Sometime later, Long Yejun got off the couch and walked toward the steel door on the other end of the room. When he opened the door, a descending staircase was revealed. "Come with me." Yuan nodded and followed Long Yejun down the staircase. The staircase led to a tunnel made of transparent materials, allowing them to see the surrounding water. It reminded Yuan of an aquarium, with the serene, vast expanse of water pressing in from all sides as they walked through the passage. However, there was no aquatic life, so there was nothing to see. After walking for several minutes, they arrived at another room where numerous objects, each radiating a vast amount of chaotic essence, were displayed like a prized collection. "Welcome to my treasure room where I store most of my valuables. Unfortunately, I don't have any valuables that could replace your destroyed clothes and shoes. Since humans don't exist in the primal expanse and predators only take human form as a hobby, armor-type treasures meant for human anatomy are extremely rare. Since I destroyed 2 of your valuables, you can pick any 2 treasures from here." Long Yejun continued. Any? Are you sure?" Yuan was pleasantly surprised by his generosity. "Yes, I am sure." "Then he'll look around." There were about a dozen treasures in the room, and Yuan approached the one that was closest to him. However, when he inspected the item, he was shocked by the notifications. "Grade? Quality? Description?" The system failed to analyze the treasure? This was the first time the system couldn't identify a treasure at all. Is it because the treasures were created in the primal expanse? He wondered. A few moments later, Yuan looked at Long Yejun and said, Do you mind giving me a brief description of these treasures so I know what they do? Oh, of course. Long Yejun walked beside him and continued, this treasure is called Dragon's Avarice. If you feed it enough chaotic essence, it will unleash a devastating attack that rivals even a dragon's breath. Is that the technique you used on me? Yuan asked. Yes. Let's move on to the next one. I'll make a decision after I hear about every treasure. Sure. The next treasure was a large golden scale that was the size of a watermelon. This is a scale directly from the dragon god. It doesn't really have any particular uses, but it's extremely durable, near indestructible. I wouldn't be able to put a scratch on it even if I used my full power. Long Yejun said. The dragon god scale? How did you acquire this? And why is it so small? It was given to me by the dragon god, our father. Our siblings also have one, so he'll probably give you one later. It's small because I made father shrink it since its actual size is a pain in the ass to carry around. Its real size could cover the entire endless arena. I see. The next treasure was an elegant earring, crafted from gleaming silver and adorned with a brilliant sapphire gem. Oh, I crafted this one myself. It greatly increases the wearer's ability to control water. I chose this shape after meeting a human a few 100 million years ago, and he was wearing something like this on his ears. Long Yejun explained. What happened to that human? Yuan asked out of curiosity. He took his own life when he realized that he couldn't return home and couldn't cultivate in this world. He was also my first and last human friend. A sorrowful expression appeared on Long Yejun's face as he recalled this tragic event. Sorry if I made you uncomfortable. It's fine. It happened a long time ago. The next treasure appeared to be nothing more than an ordinary sheet of black leather at first glance, but Yuan could sense an ominous aura emanating from it. This is dragon skin that belongs to the Dragon of Destruction, who was said to be the dragon god's strongest rival billions of years ago. After his defeat, he was skinned alive and eaten by the dragon god. This is all that remains of the Dragon of Destruction today. Yuan stared at the black leather with great interest. I can make new armor out of this, he thought. Chapter 1662 Two Treasures of His Choice? Chapter 1662 Two Treasures of His Choice. Long Yejun noticed Yuan's intrigued expression and smiled. You seem interested. Do you want it? He nodded, a little, but I will decide after looking at the other treasures. Then let's move on to the next one. The next treasure displayed was a beautiful golden marble resembling a dragon's eyes. This is the dragon's true eye. If you consume it, you'll significantly strengthen all of your senses and even learn dragon's authority. Since you already know dragon's authority, this treasure won't benefit you too much, but for an ordinary dragon, it essentially turns them into royalty. The next treasure appeared to be some kind of stone. It didn't have any distinctive shape, and its chaotic essence was also the weakest in the room. This is a small piece of the dragon god's claw. I acquired it from the first dragon god's descendant, who managed to chip it off the dragon god during a spar. If you know how to make your own treasures, this will definitely create a very powerful treasure. Yuan stared at the dragon god's claw with interest. Because he had recovered Tian Qiyuan's memories as the exalted blacksmith, these materials were more enticing than already completed treasures because he could easily customize the treasure to his own preferences. This material will be the most effective if used to create a weapon, but I already have enough weapons. Perhaps I can use it to upgrade the abyssal dagger. All sorts of ideas appeared inside Yuan's head. Sometime later, Long Yejun continued introducing the treasures to him. Since there were only a dozen treasures in the room, it didn't take long for the tour to be finished. So, have you decided on which two treasures you want? Ling Yejun asked him afterward. Yuan nodded and walked to the Dragon of Destruction's skin. I want this for my first choice. I had a feeling you would pick that. If needed, I can get someone to craft a treasure for you with that skin. Yuan shook his head and said, It's fine. I plan on doing it myself. What? This material isn't your ordinary skin but the Dragon of Destruction's skin. You'll need to be a master of crafting to deal with it. I know. I just need the proper equipment and place to craft the treasure. Yuan showed a confident smile. Unbelievable. How many talents do you have? Long Yejun muttered with a dumbfounded face. After snapping out of it, he continued, All right, I'll arrange the perfect place for you to craft the treasure. It might take a few months though. As long as it can be done before the Dragon God Festival, Yuan said. Long Yejun retrieved the Dragon of Destruction's skin from the display and handed it over to Yuan. There's a lot more than I anticipated, Yuan mumbled after unfolding the skin to examine it properly. Ingzi was puzzled since she hadn't noticed him leaving the Divine Dragon Hall even though she had been watching it without looking away the entire time. Yuan immediately explained the situation to her. Chapter 1663 Baneful Dragon's Poisonous Swamp. Chapter 1663 Baneful Dragon's Poisonous Swamp. I see? Despite Yuan explaining the situation to her, Ingzi only became more puzzled afterward. She couldn't fathom how Yuan, who was obviously human, became the dragon god's descendant. Moreover, he should have the Primal Monarch's bloodline. However, she quickly stopped thinking about it, realizing it was pointless to overthink something she wasn't meant to understand. Your friend is a shadow dweller, huh? It's been over 1,000,000 years since I last encountered their race. Long Yejun commented as he stared at Ingzi, as it was incredibly rare for a shadow dweller to be so far away from their natural habitat, the hollowed expanse. Oh, let me introduce myself. I am the second dragon god's descendant, Long Yejun. Ingzi. Let's head to the baneful dragon's poisonous swamp now, shall we? Yuan said a moment later. Sure. Since their destination was only 3 days away from the Divine Dragon Hall, they decided to fly there instead of wasting a teleport stone. While they traveled, Long Yejun gave an introduction to the baneful dragon's poisonous swamp. Baneful dragons are the strongest poison dragons and some of the most feared creatures in the primal expanse due to their dreadful poisons. Their poisons are so deadly that even entities with poison immunities could perish from them. They're also so incredibly annoying to deal with that even the dragon god avoids fighting them as much as possible. How are they annoying to deal with? Yuan asked curiously. Their bodies are essentially made of poison, so they release poison from any wounds inflicted upon them. The only way to fight them is from a safe distance, and you must defeat them swiftly, or else their poison will spread. Unfortunately, that is easier said than done because baneful dragons are annoyingly durable. There's a reason poison dragons are considered one of the most powerful and dangerous dragon bloodlines. What bloodline does the dragon god have? Yuan asked. I would love to tell you, but unfortunately even I do not have the answer. What? Even though you're his offspring? Long Yejun nodded and sighed. We've asked him many times, but he said he'd only tell us if we can defeat him, which is essentially impossible. Even the eldest, who is recognized as the most talented dragon since the dragon god, the unrivaled tyrant, hasn't defeated him after many billions of years. I've heard about the first dragon god's descendant multiple times now, but I still don't have a clue what they're like. Yuan suddenly said. There's only one thing you need to be aware of about the eldest. Long Yejun paused to look around nervously. Once he was sure nobody was eavesdropping on them, he continued speaking through divine sense. That bitch is fucking crazy. No matter what, don't speak with her. As a matter of fact, don't even approach her. If you ever see her, run the other direction. The eldest is a woman, huh? Yuan thought to himself. What does she look like so I know it's her? Yuan then asked. She has multiple appearances and changes quite often, so it's impossible to recognize her from appearance alone. However, you'll still recognize her at a glance. I don't get it. You'll understand when you meet her. Not even a hint? Nope. Long Yejun refused with a smile. Forget it then. 3 days later, they arrived at the baneful dragon's poisonous swamp. Just as its name implied, the place was literally a swamp but with poisonous water and plants everywhere. There are 3 different zones in the baneful dragon's poisonous swamp: outer, inner, and center. Every zone has many layers of poisonous water, each containing a unique poison. We're currently in the first zone on the very outskirts of the place. Long Yejun explained. As you go deeper and approach the center of the swamp, the poison will become stronger. Do not underestimate this place or you'll die. I have the antidote for all poisons up to the inner zone so you don't have to worry about dying. However, once you enter the inner zone, I cannot save you and only the baneful dragon could save you. Yuan nodded. Thank you for the warning. After taking a deep breath, Yuan entered the swamp. The swamp is much shallower than I anticipated. Yuan thought to himself as the water in the swamp only reached his knees. Once he confirmed that his poison immunity was working, Yuan began walking deeper. Several steps later he was poisoned by a different type of poison. He continued walking deeper into the swamp. After walking 300 steps and being exposed to over 20 different types of deadly poison, Yuan had only managed to complete a little under 10% of the first zone, meaning he was still over 2,000 steps away from reaching the second zone. My poison resistance isn't increasing. I guess I have to be poisoned by something that my 10,000 poison immunity cannot handle. With that in mind, Yuan continued walking to the next zone. Sometime later, Yuan finished 90% of the first zone after experiencing over 200 different types of poison. When he was poisoned for the 207th time, a change occurred in his notifications. Ding. Seeing that his physique had finally activated, Yuan sat in the poisonous water and began cultivating. Although his physique was refining the poison, it didn't mean he wasn't experiencing any pain. In fact, Yuan was currently experiencing excruciating pain from every inch of his body. Chapter 1660 400,000 Poison Immunity. Chapter 1660 400,000 Poison Immunity. Wow, he's doing much better than I expected. Long Yejun muttered with a surprised look after seeing how far Yuan had progressed in the Baneful dragon's poisonous swamp. He turned to look at Ingzi, who was standing beside him, and asked, "How long have you been traveling with him?" "A little over 2 years. So only recently, huh? How did you guys meet?" "I was the one who approached him. He appeared out of nowhere and piqued my interest." "Is that so?" Sometime later, Yuan stood up after receiving a notification. Progress, 10%. Yuan stopped to cultivate again. A few minutes later, Yuan walked to the next layer. He continued this until he reached the last layer of the first zone. Progress, 25%. It was only when his poison immunity advanced to the next realm that he noticed an increase in his progress. This realization led Yuan to believe that he would need to continue elevating his poison immunity to even higher levels in order to complete his progress. Sometime later, Yuan walked forward, stepping into the second zone of the swamp. Long Yejun swallowed nervously when he saw this. The second zone was incomparably more challenging than the first, and even poison dragons had trouble adapting to the poison there. He's only been here for a few hours and he's already entering the second zone. Long Yejun sighed out loud as he recalled taking several 100 million years to reach that point. His insane speed of adapting to poison. He's definitely a poison dragon. Long Yejun was already convinced that Yuan was a poison dragon. Otherwise it would make no sense. Long Yejun suddenly noticed a powerful presence behind him, prompting him to turn around. A tall and handsome man with purple, blue, and green hair was walking toward them with a slight smile on his face. "It's been a while since I've seen you at my playground, Prince Yejun." This man greeted Long Yejun with respect. "Baneful dragon. Are you here to watch my little brother too?" Sure enough, this newcomer was the Baneful dragon, the creator of the poisonous swamp. "Your little brother?" The Baneful dragon looked at Yuan and smiled. "So that's the rumored fourth dragon god's descendant. And I came here because I noticed something odd was happening at my playground." "Something odd?" Long Yejun raised his eyebrows in a questioning manner. "My poisonous swamp started losing its strength rapidly a few hours ago, almost as if someone was purposefully detoxifying the poison." The Baneful dragon narrowed his gaze at Yuan and continued, "Turns out he has been absorbing my poison and using it to enhance his own body, and at an incredible rate at that." "What? Isn't that something only someone who has attained poison harmony could achieve?" Long Yejun's eyes widened with shock. Chapter 1665 Heaven's Bane. Chapter 1665 Heaven's Bane. Another 2 weeks have passed since Yuan attained myriad poison immunity. True poison immunity. Description: grants the user immunity to most poisons. Progress: 90%. Looks like I will have to advance my poison immunity by one more stage if I want to complete the fusion. Yuan thought to himself as he took his first step into the third zone, where the poisons are strong enough to kill even immortals within seconds. "I would have stopped him from advancing further if you weren't here, Baneful dragon," Long Yejun said. However, the Baneful dragon shook his head and said, "Even with me here, there's nothing I can do to save him in the third zone because the poison there are strong enough to kill him before I can even attempt to save him. My poisonous swamp isn't the most dangerous training ground in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary without reason. It has the most casualties, and even other Baneful dragons have perished here because they underestimated my poison." "What? Then I need to stop him immediately. Before it's too late." Long Yejun hastily said. Hell be fine. Ingzi suddenly spoke for the first time since the Baneful Dragon's appearance. Where is your confidence coming from? The Baneful Dragon inquired, his gaze filled with intrigue. From experience, I guess. I've seen what he's capable of. But you've only been with him for around 2 years. Long Yejun exclaimed. And in those 2 years, I have witnessed enough to be confident of him. Ingzi shrugged. Long Yejun shifted his focus to Yuan again and swallowed nervously. Even that unrivaled tyrant hasn't stepped foot inside the third zone. He mumbled in a dazed voice. The third zone of the Baneful Dragon's poisonous swamp was much smaller than the previous 2, requiring only 100 steps to reach its very center. However, each step introduced a new, more potent layer of poison. These toxins were so deadly that even those at the God Ascension would succumb to them within minutes. Even with true poison immunity, Yuan couldn't take more than 10 steps before he had to sit down to cultivate. The pain he experienced was excruciating, and if it weren't for his regeneration ability that constantly created healthy blood cells and restored his organs, the poison would have melted his body within seconds. Oh God, what is his body made of? The Baneful Dragon was shocked by what he was witnessing, and he even began to doubt the effectiveness of his poison, something he had been immensely proud of for countless years. That regenerative ability, if he's not a poison dragon, he's a dragon with extremely high recovery rates. Long Yejun immediately started thinking of the possibilities. Only an undying dragon would be able to rival that recovery speed of his, but they are especially weak to poison, so that can't be right. The dragon god's blood within him might have something to do with that. No, the dragon god's blood only enhances our existing abilities to extreme lengths. None of the dragon god's descendants have abilities beyond what they're capable of, not even the unrivaled tyrant. For example, Long Yejun's ability to control water reached levels other ancient Azure dragons could never hope to achieve because of the dragon god's blood within him. However, he would not suddenly acquire the ability to control the void or fire. 4 hours later, Yuan stood up and took another step before sitting back down again to cultivate. He would continue to spend 4 hours for each step until he reached the 69th step. Ding. Progress. 100%. The Baneful Dragon narrowed his eyes, sensing a drastic change in Yuan's body and aura as his physique merged properly. What a ridiculous monster. Even the unrivaled tyrant is nothing in front of his poison affinity. The Baneful Dragon praised loudly. Don't let her hear that or she'll kill you. Long Yejun said as he nervously looked around to make sure nobody there heard it. Relax. This place is usually empty. The Baneful Dragon laughed. I wonder why. Long Yejun shook his head. Meanwhile, Yuan continued his march toward the very center of the poisonous swamp. Unlike before, when each step took him hours to complete, this time he moved forward without pause, not stopping for even a second. In the blink of an eye, he reached the very center of the Baneful Dragon's poisonous swamp. Heaven's Bane. Rank, Celestial, Mastery Level, 1. Description: the strongest poison, the bane of all existence. A single drop of Heaven's Bane could poison even heaven itself. Despite the powerful new technique had just acquired, Yuan was paying attention to something else, something inside the Baneful Dragon's poisonous swamp. He crouched down and reached into the water, carefully retrieving a purple crystal as large as his entire head. The crystal gleamed with an otherworldly glow and exuded a deadly presence. What is this? He muttered. Congratulations, 4th Dragon God's Descendant. The Baneful Dragon suddenly appeared before Yuan with a wide smile on his face. Who are you? I am the Baneful Dragon, the owner and creator of this wonder playground. And you've just become the first entity to defeat all of my poison by reaching the very center of the swamp. That object in your hand is a baneful crystal, a treasure I have been nurturing for over 1 billion years in this playground. It can be used to create poison or as a material to craft another treasure. I'll give it to you to celebrate this occasion. Thank you, Baneful Dragon. I will put this treasure into good use, Yuan said, already thinking about how he should use it. Join privilege for VIP chaps. The training ground stretched across a vast, barren landscape, where lightning strikes continuously poured down like raindrops in a storm, illuminating the area with their relentless fury. With countless lightning strikes crashing down incessantly, the training ground was filled with a deafening noise. The clamor was so overwhelming that it was impossible to stay there without sealing one's hearing. Long Yejun snapped his fingers, covering their group in a soundproof barrier. What a chaotic place and scenery, but it's also oddly beautiful. Yuan muttered. Unlike the baneful dragon's poisonous swamp, which was devoid of any presence, the sky-splitting dragon's tribulation was bustling with beings. Hey, look over there. 2 of the 7 dragon monarchs are together. It didn't take long for the beings there to notice Yuan's group. Wow. The water dragon monarch and the poison dragon monarch? What a rare sight. In the divine dragon sanctuary, there exists a prestigious title separate from the regular rankings, bestowed only upon the strongest dragons of their respective elements. Both the baneful dragon and Long Yejun held this revered title as the poison dragon monarch and the water dragon monarch. The spy-splitting dragon was also one of the 7 dragon monarchs as the lightning dragon monarch. What are they doing together at this training ground? And who are those 2 unfamiliar faces with them? I recognize the young man. He's the 4th dragon god's descendant. So he's the one. While the onlookers chatted, Long Yejun explained the training ground to Yuan. There are 9 levels of difficulty in this training ground, Long Yejun explained. You basically temper your body at the level you can endure until you're ready to move on to the next. Quite simple, right? For reference, my limit is level 3, Long Yejun continued. Only level 3? Yuan remarked with raised eyebrows, surprised that the limit seemed relatively low for someone of Long Yejun's stature. As a water dragon, I am especially weak to lightning, so it's much harder for me to train here than others. By the way, my limit is level 5. The baneful dragon said. What about the unrivaled tyrant? Yuan asked out of curiosity. She's conquered all 9 levels a few million years ago. Long Yejun said. But it took her 300 million years of straight training. 300 million years? Yuan swallowed hard at the sheer enormity of that number, unable to hide his awe and disbelief. Hopefully it won't take me anywhere as long. After taking a moment to prepare himself, Yuan entered the training ground. Then I'll see you later. Good luck. They said to him. Look. The 4th dragon god's descendant has entered the training ground. The onlookers started shifting their attention to him. After entering the training ground, Yuan was immediately bombarded with lightning strikes that could easily kill even a divine grandmaster. However, it merely tickled him, who had attained the golden immortal physique. Yet, he didn't continue to the 2nd level and sat down to cultivate in the 1st level. Unlike the poisonous swamp, where I had some poison immunity since the beginning, I don't have any resistance to lightning, so I must build it up from scratch, he thought inwardly. Join privilege for VIP chaps. What a brutal yet efficient method of training. Only someone like him could possibly do something like this. He did that with the poison at my playground too. The baneful dragon shook his head with a defeated smile. Word of Yuan's training at the sky-splitting dragon's tribulation spread like wildfire, drawing an increasing number of onlookers. Some were captivated by the rumors of the 4th dragon god's descendant, eager to glimpse his identity, while others came to witness his potential firsthand. 2 weeks later, Yuan advanced his lightning resistance to the next level. After attaining powerful lightning resistance, the purple lightning in the 2nd level no longer obliterated his arm. Instead, it merely tickled him, while the lightning from the 1st level had become so weak he could no longer feel it at all. Seeing this, Yuan confidently strolled into the 2nd level. However, he didn't stop and continued moving until he was right before the 3rd level. Then, just like before, he tested the water with his arm. Boom. The red lightning strikes in the 3rd level instantly obliterated his arm, and his lightning resistance didn't increase even slightly. Meanwhile, the purple lightning no longer increased his resistance moderately. Now it only increased his resistance slightly. After seeing the results, Yuan no longer bothered with the 3rd level and focused on cultivating in the 2nd level. My god, he's managed to progress from the 1st level to the 2nd level in just 3 weeks. What monstrous speed! The onlookers exclaimed with shock. Even the unrivaled tyrant took several years. Does this mean the 4th dragon's god descendant is potentially even more talented than the unrivaled tyrant? No, this just means he's more talented than her in this one aspect. The unrivaled tyrant has conquered most of the training grounds in the divine dragon sanctuary, after all. Also, it is still too early to say anything. Even if his progress is faster than others, that won't mean anything if he reaches his limit too quickly. A month later. After advancing his resistance, Yuan repeated what he had done at the first level and cultivated in the third level with only half of his body. During this time, news of Yuan's intense training session continued to spread across the territory, drawing in a steady stream of new onlookers. Curiosity and excitement filled the air as more people gathered, eager to witness his remarkable progress. "Elder brother, I knew you'd be here." Long Meihui approached Long Yejun after noticing him at the training ground. "Oh, you're also here, Baneful Dragon?" "It's been a while, Princess Meihui." The Baneful Dragon greeted her with a handsome smile. "How long have you been watching?" Long Yejun asked her. "I just arrived," she said, turning to gaze at Yuan with a look of awe in her eyes. "If you find any errors, ads pop up, ads redirect, broken links, non-standard content, etc." Chapter 1668 Courting Death. Chapter 1668 Courting Death. "How long has he been training here?" Long Meihui asked. "I'll be 2 months tomorrow," Long Yejun said. "Did he start from level 2? "No, he started from level 1. "What? He went from level 1 to level 3 in 2 months? That's impossible." Long Meihui exclaimed, her face filled with disbelief. The Baneful Dragon smiled and said, "Then you'll definitely not believe this, but he came here right after conquering my poisonous swamp in just a month." "What?" Long Meihui snapped her head to look at the Baneful Dragon with eyes as wide as saucers. "That's literally impossible. Even Elder Sister hasn't conquered the poisonous swamp. And you're telling me he's managed to do just that in a month?" Long Yejun chuckled at her reaction. "It's true. I was there from the beginning." "That's..." Long Meihui fell silent with a dazed expression on her face. In the blink of an eye, 2 more months passed. After advancing his lightning resistance, Yuan entered the 3rd level with his entire body and walked straight to the border of level 3 and level 4. However, when he tried sticking an arm in level 4, Yuan was pleasantly surprised to see his lightning resistance increase, and his arm hadn't been obliterated, only burnt. Of course, it was unfathomably painful. Even though it was only his arm getting struck, he felt the pain throughout his entire body. No pain, no gain. After mentally preparing himself, Yuan walked into the 4th level, shocking the onlookers. He's going straight into level 4 this time. How bold. No matter how many times I see it, his regenerative ability still shocks me. Is he an undying dragon? Most likely. Time continued to swiftly pass and another 3 months have passed. By now, Yuan has spent 7 months in the sky-splitting dragon's tribulation. If the cultivators in the 9 heavens knew that had managed to start creating his heavenly physique in such little time, not even the heavens could predict their reaction. Even the most talented cultivators required centuries, if not millenniums, of rigorous training to attain the incomplete heavenly physique, but Yuan had managed to achieve it in a little over half a year. However, the incomplete heavenly physique was just the beginning, as he still had to advance it a few more times to achieve the completed heavenly physique. Progress, 25%. Yuan went to stick an arm into the 5th level shortly after. When he confirmed that he was able to survive the lightning strikes, he entered the 5th level with his entire body. Level 5 in 7 months. I don't think anyone is going to beat this record. The onlookers could feel their bodies trembling in excitement. If he continues at this pace, he'll reach level 9 before the Dragon God Festival. However, to the onlookers' shock, Yuan increased his pace and just a month later he began walking toward the 6th level. Progress, 50%. When he entered the 6th level and was bombarded with silver-colored lightning strikes, Yuan was pleasantly surprised to find out that he was enduring the lightning strikes with relative ease. Thus, he made a bold move and went into the 7th level after testing the waters with an arm. He's already at level 7? The 7th level unleashed torrents of black-colored lightning strikes, each bolt as thick as a tree trunk, crashing down with immense power and fury. Although he was able to endure the 7th level, each lightning strike was powerful enough to almost completely erase his existence. Ding. Courting Death. Description: the holder of this title has faced the brink of death countless times. All sources of healing will be 1000% more effective. After receiving his new title, Yuan's regeneration became even more powerful. Is it just me or is he regenerating even faster now? You noticed it too? The onlookers did not miss this detail. By now, the entire sky-splitting dragon's tribulation was filled to the brim with onlookers, all of them watching with anticipation for the moment Yuan conquers the training ground. In fact, even the sky-splitting dragon himself was present to witness history being made. Took you long enough to show up, Lightning Dragon Monarch. Long Yejun said as he looked at the handsome, bulky man approaching their group. I had to confirm the rumors, that someone had reached the 7th level from the 1st level in under a year. Is it true? It is very much true. Long Meihui said. The sky-splitting dragon looked around and asked, where's the unrivaled tyrant? I thought she'd be here as well. I haven't seen her since she entered the void vortex 2 million years ago. Long Yejun said. But she should be returning soon for the Dragon God Festival. Long Meihui continued. The baneful dragon shuddered at the thought and sighed, if only she never returned. Time continued to pass, and it has been 10 months since Yuan entered the sky-splitting dragon's tribulation. Ding. Yuan had finally acquired the heavenly physique after 10 gruesome months of training. However, even after acquiring the highly coveted heavenly physique, his progress only went up to 90%. Progress, 90%. I guess there's one more stage beyond the heavenly physique? With that thought in mind, Yuan began approaching the 8th level, where golden-colored lightning strikes poured heavier than rain in a storm. He's heading for level 8. The onlookers swallowed nervously as they watched Yuan step into the 8th level after making sure he could endure it. Chapter 1669 Heavenly Physique. Chapter 1669 Heavenly Physique. After reaching the 8th level, Yuan didn't pause and continued toward the 9th level. However, just as he was about to extend his arm into the 9th level, he suddenly stopped. His instincts had kicked in, warning him that he wouldn't escape with just a destroyed arm if he underestimated the 9th level. Let's ignore the 9th level for now. Yuan took several steps back and sat down to cultivate in the 8th level. I guess he's not just bold and reckless. Long Yejun laughed out loud after seeing Yuan's actions. He has good instincts. The sky-splitting dragon smiled. You guys want to play a game? Let's bet on how long he'll take to reach the 9th level and conquer the training ground. The baneful dragon suddenly suggested. He'll start with 5 months. Sounds fun. He'll bet a year. The sky-splitting dragon confidently said. Then he'll go with 6 months. Long Meihui said. Long Yejun pondered for a moment before speaking. I'll bet he'll conquer this place within 3 months. What are we betting anyway? Ingzi asked. Good question. How about something we consider valuable? Even if it's only slightly. Sure. Then I'll bet 100 meat skewers he'll finish in a month, Ingzi said. Meat skewers? What are those? They looked at her with raised eyebrows. The only person who knew what the meat skewers were aside from Ingzi was Long Meihui, who had experienced their deliciousness before. It's food, she calmly said. Food? How's that valuable? The baneful dragon asked. Long Meihui responded in Yingzi's stead. I can vouch for their value. They're unlike anything you've ever seen or tasted before. I can still clearly taste them even though it's been a year since I had them. Now I'm interested. Long Yejun said with an intrigued smile. But I thought they belonged to Brother Yuan. Long Meihui then inquired while looking at Ingzi. They do, but some of them belong to me, she said. I see. A month and 20 days later. Progress, 100%, finally. Yuan stood up and immediately began walking towards the 9th level. This time, his instincts told him that he had no problem withstanding the rainbow-colored lightning strikes in the 9th level. No way, is he already ready to conquer the training ground? The sky-splitting dragon exclaimed in a shocked voice after seeing Yuan's actions. Slightly under 2 months. If he manages to conquer this place, it'll be the Shadow Dwellers win since she has the closest guess. Long Yejun said. After taking a deep breath, Yuan stepped into the 9th level. As the lightning strikes rained down on him, they rapidly changed colors, giving an odd scenery. Heaven's Final Judgment. Rank, Celestial. Description, the pinnacle of lightning mastery, a level no human has ever attained. A single strike shall split the heavens and obliterate stars. He's done it. Chapter 1670 Something Fun. Chapter 1670 Something Fun. Where did you go just now? Long Yejun asked Yuan after he returned to the Primal Expanse a few minutes later. That's a secret, Yuan said with a smile. It was common for powerful beings in the Primal Expanse to disappear and appear suddenly, so the others weren't too baffled by Yuan's sudden disappearance. Of course they were curious, but seeing how Yuan didn't want to talk about it, they didn't question it. Are you going to the next training ground now? The baneful dragon suddenly inquired. Yuan shook his head and said, I am going to take a short break. Is there any place where I can have some privacy for a few days? You can stay at my abode. Long Yejun said. Thanks. Yuan nodded. Wait. Before you go, can I shamelessly ask for a few more of those skewers? Long Meihui suddenly said. Yuan smiled, sure. He retrieved 10 meat skewers and handed them to her the next moment. Long Yejun and the others stared at meat skewers as they were being handed to her, their eyes wide with surprise. What a unique aroma. Do you think I can get some, too? Long Yejun asked with a watery mouth. Of course. After giving a handful of skewers to Long Yejun, Yuan turned to look at the others and asked, Do you also want some? Please? The baneful dragon and the sky-splitting dragon eagerly nodded. Thanks. By the way, I am the creator of this place, the sky-splitting dragon. The sky-splitting dragon introduced himself after receiving the skewers. Oh, it's nice to meet you. This is a great training ground. Yuan said. You have no idea how much it hurts my pride when you conquer it so quickly. Let us know when you head to the next training ground. I want to be there when you conquer another one. Long Meihui said a moment later. Sure. Yuan nodded. Sometime later, Long Yejun shattered a teleport stone, teleporting Yuan and Ingzi to his living quarters. You can go without me. I received the notification that your crafting room was prepared a month ago. I'll go verify it myself first. Don't worry, there's no rush. You can take your time. Long Yejun said to them. Thanks for everything so far. No, thank you for entertaining me. Long Yejun laughed before disappearing. Once they were inside Long Yejun's home, Yuan handed Ingzi the rest of her meat skewers and said, He'll be gone for about a week or two. Okay. Yuan logged off shortly after. When he returned to his real body, Chu Liuxiang and Meixiu were already awake and waiting for him. Welcome back, Meixiu said. I'm so sorry. Yuan wasted no time lowering his head and apologizing to her. I was caught up in training and lost track of the time. I know. Lulu already told me. Still, I wanted to apologize to you myself. It's fine. Honestly, it didn't feel that long. I guess the higher our cultivation, the more we're prone to losing track of time. Meixiu chuckled. Right? I have also been a victim of this. Chu Liuxiang said. Yuan then inquired about the Lord. Anyway, how's the Lord doing? I haven't replenished his energy in a year after all. He's doing fine for now. I visited him last week. Chu Liuxiang said. That's good. He'll go replenish his energy right now. Yuan left from their balcony and flew straight to the peak of the mountain. The Lord emerged from his cave after sensing Yuan's presence approaching his place. It's been a while. Sorry, I lost track of time during my training. I hope you're doing okay. I have endured many centuries without any help. A single year won't kill me. The Lord laughed out loud. Oh. Anyway, I'll call Jiran now. Yuan summoned the starry abyss shortly after. However, after being summoned, Jiran said, Sorry, but I barely recovered any spiritual energy because the primal expanse lacks spiritual energy, so I won't be able to help. Now that you mention it. Yuan rubbed his eyes after realizing this blunder. I'm sorry, but you'll have to use my spiritual energy until I leave the primal expanse, he then said. I don't mind waiting until you leave the primal expanse. After all, even if you give me all your spiritual energy, it will only give me relief for a brief moment. The Lord said. He continued, Moreover, the amount of spiritual energy I have received so far is enough to last another decade. All right. Then I will return once I leave the primal expanse. It shouldn't take too long. Probably another year or two at most. Yuan returned to his living quarters afterward. How's training with the Eternal Lotuses lately? It must have been rough without my spiritual bath. Yuan asked. Yes, it was definitely rough on the trainees at first since they suddenly stopped recovering overnight, but they've adapted. Moreover, every single member of their faction is training with us now. Meixiu said. That's good to hear. The Eternal Lotuses have also advanced their rank back to the top 10. Chu Liuxiang then said. What about us? Have you guys participated in any faction war since the last one? Unfortunately, they're still afraid to challenge us. And since we've been inactive for a whole year, we're back to being unranked. Chu Liuxiang sighed. The ranking doesn't have any meaning to us anyway. Yuan shrugged nonchalantly. He then asked, Any news on the government or the 10 great families? Well, we know they're watching us from outside the Dragon Spiral Mountain, but that's about it, Meixiu said. That's good. By the way, When are you going to return to cultivation online? Chu Liuxiang suddenly asked. I intend to stay here for a week or two before I return. Do you have something to do on Earth? He shook his head and said, No, I just want to spend some time with you guys since I've been away for a whole year. Then do you want to go out and have some fun? It's been a while since we've done anything fun together. Chu Liuxiang suggested. Yuan nodded. Let's do that. Chapter 1671 Ready or Not? Chapter 1671 Ready or Not? Do you have any suggestions? Chu Liuxiang asked. Yuan pondered for a good moment before responding. There is this place that I have always wanted to go to as a child but never got the chance to for obvious reasons. 9 Flags Amusement Park. An amusement park, huh? I have also never been to one before. Let's go. Chu Liuxiang immediately agreed, even appearing quite excited about it. What about the others? Meihui asked. We can invite everyone. I'll let you know later. Yuan said. Sometime later, Chu Liuxiang logged into to invite the Demon Sealing faction. Meanwhile, Yuan and Meihui went to visit the Eternal Lotuses. Brother, you're finally back. Yuro was nearly brought to tears after seeing Yuan's face for the first time in over a year. Sorry? Yuan apologized and explained the situation to her. I thought we would see each other more often after becoming your neighbor. How wrong I was. She sighed. Yuan smiled and said, This is the nature of the cultivation world. Anyway, you've grown taller and even more pretty since I last saw you. Trying to change the subject? Well, I'll forgive you this time. Yuro showed a bashful smile after hearing his praises. Then, changing the subject again, I'm here to give you an invitation. We've decided to visit the 9 Flags Amusement Park. Want to tag along? I want to go. Yuro responded immediately and without any hesitation. She continued, Oh, but can I invite Sister Jingyi and Sister Lianhua? Of course. Great. I'll go let her know now. While Yuro went to speak with Xia Jingyi, Yuan visited by Lianhua. Chem? Who is it? Bai Lianhua stopped her paperwork after hearing her door being knocked on. It's me, Yuan. Yuan? Surprised by his voice, Bai Lianhua swiftly stood up and rushed to open the door. Is really you? Are you okay? Yuan nodded and explained the situation. Thank God it's only that. I was worried that something bad might happen to you. I'm glad that wasn't the case. Bai Lianhua sighed in relief after learning of the truth. Sorry for making you worry. It's fine. Anyway, did you need something from me? Yes, I'd like to invite you to the amusement park. Amusement park? Bai Lianhua took a step back with a bewildered expression on her face. Is he asking me out on a date? She cried inwardly as her heart began racing like a sports car. If you're too busy, I understand, Yuan said as his gaze shifted to the piles of paperwork on her desk. I'll come. Bai Lianhua hastily responded. I need a breath of fresh air once in a while. Great. I'll let you know once I receive the others' answers. Huh? The others? Bai Lianhua wore a dumbfounded look on her face. Yes, I also invited the rest of the Demon Sealing faction. Yuro and her friend will be coming as well. Is that so? I cannot wait. Bai Lianhua's face flushed with redness after she realized her blunder. Why did I think we'd be alone? She cried inwardly. Later that day, Yuan confirmed that everyone would be going to the amusement park. When do you want to go? I'll schedule it for everyone. Meifeng asked him during dinner. Since this is quite sudden, how does the day after tomorrow sound? Yuan asked the others as everyone invited was present at the dining table. Once everyone agreed to go in 2 days, Meifeng went to schedule the event. An amusement park, huh? The closest thing we have to one at the Jaded Garden would be the playgrounds. Wang Ming mused. I cannot wait, Wang Bingbing said. After dinner, Li Jinsi approached Yuan to make an appointment. Let's have a spar tomorrow morning. I want to see how much stronger you've gotten in a year. Sure. I'll meet you at the training ground tomorrow. That night, Yuan went to the spare room with Meihui, and the two of them embraced each other for the entire night. How's your training with Kellen? Yuan asked as they took a bath together. Even though we've trained with him for a year, his training sessions don't get any easier. No matter how much we improve, he always has something even more difficult prepared for us. Because of that, we're unable to relax. However, as a result, we improve consistently at a tremendous rate. What about you? What kind of training made you lose track of time? Yuan gave her a detailed description of the training grounds in the Divine Dragon Sanctuary and the training had done so far. Your training is at an entirely different level, but why am I not surprised? Meanwhile, we're still learning our basics and strengthening our foundations. Meihui sighed. The basics are just as important as whatever I am doing. Remember, I have experience from my past lives, so it's only natural for me to be significantly ahead. My starting line is different from everyone else, so there's no need to compare yourself to me. I know, but it's human nature to compare ourselves with others. After coming out of the bathroom, Yuan headed straight to the training ground, where Li Jinxi stood, the Golden Empress already firmly in her grasp. Although it had been a year since they last sparred, and it was natural for people to change in that much time, Yuan could sense that there was something fundamentally different about the Li Jinxi standing before him now. Did something happen? Yuan inquired with a curious gaze. Why would you ask me that? Li Jinxi asked. Just felt like it, I guess. He'll tell you if you can beat me. Yuan smiled and said, you should only utter such words if you've never lost to your opponent before. Well, I haven't lost to the current you yet, Li Jinxi said in a weird tone. What? Yuan raised an eyebrow. Li Jinxi couldn't wait any longer and got into her fighting position. That stance. Yuan's eyes widened. Ready or not, here I come, Yuan. Or should I call you Tian Xian? A wide smile spread across Li Jinxi's face as she flew at Yuan, who looked stunned and was completely caught off guard by the way she addressed him. Jin Shi, he exclaimed. Chapter 1672 Amusement Park. Chapter 1672 Amusement Park. Yuan hastily retrieved his abyssal dagger to block Li Jinxi's attack. So you finally remembered your past life? Yuan inquired as they clashed. I won't say anything until you beat me, Li Jinxi repeated. But you've already said a lot. Yuan smiled. However, instead of going all out to defeat her quickly, Yuan was curious to see how strong Li Jinxi had become after a year of training with Kellen and regaining Jinzai's memories. Their clashes were so intense that, if not for the formation surrounding the training ground, each strike would have caused the entire mountain to tremble violently. I know this is not all you've got, Li Jinxi said to him a few minutes later when neither of them were gaining an advantage. I can say the same to you. You seem weaker compared to our last spar a year ago. Yuan smiled. If I truly went all out, this mountain would perish in the blink of an eye. Only the mountain? This world would perish if I went all out. Yuan shrugged. You will be returning to the Nine Heavens soon, right? Let's postpone our match until then. We can only go all out in the Nine Heavens anyway, she suggested. I can't give an exact date of my return, but it won't be too long. I also agree that we won't be able to fight seriously unless it's within the Nine Heavens, so I don't mind postponing our match until I return. After a slight pause, Yuan continued with a provocative smile. It'll give you more time to mentally prepare for your inevitable defeat too. Then it's settled, Li Jinxi said as she stowed away her weapon. Are you really not going to say anything until then? Yuan then asked. That's what I said, no? Without saying anything else, Li Jinxi left the training ground, leaving Yuan standing there with a dumbfounded face. After leaving, Li Jinxi returned to her room and stood before a mirror with a perplexed expression on her face. So it's real, she muttered in a dazed voice. Early in the morning the following day, everyone from the Demon Sealing faction and 3 individuals from Eternal Lotuses gathered at the gates of the Dragon Spiral Mountain, where a long limousine picked them up and drove them to the Dragon Spiral Mountain's private airport. It's Yuan and the rest of the Demon Sealing faction. They're finally leaving the Dragon Spiral Mountain. The people hired by the government to watch over the Dragon Spiral Mountain were shocked to see Yuan and the others leave the mountain, and they quickly notified their superiors. When did you buy a private jet? Yuan asked Meihui when they arrived at the airport to see a luxurious private jet with the name of their faction printed on its body. A few months ago, she said. We have plenty of money, so you don't have to worry about our finances. I'm not worried at all. I was just curious, Yuan said with a smile. Yuro asked Yuan as they feasted. Yuan shook his head and said, Not really, but if there's anything you want to do, don't hesitate to let me know. Okay. Let me think about it. She nodded. Chapter 1674 Metal Dragon Monarch. Chapter 1674 Metal Dragon Monarch. Can you show me the workshop for now? Yuan asked the bald man. By the way, how should I address you? The man lifted his head in a prideful manner and introduced himself. I am the Metal Dragon Monarch, refined obsidian dragon. I am also one of the few beings in the primal expanse capable of creating treasures. As a matter of fact, nobody dares to claim they are number one as long as I am still alive. Creating treasures was unheard of in the primal expanse until a human skilled in treasure crafting appeared hundreds of millions of years ago. Since then they have acquired the ability and knowledge to craft treasures. However, despite its potential, crafting treasures remained a niche practice in the primal expanse, as the knowledge and techniques were originally designed solely for humans. While some, like the refined obsidian dragon, have refined and further developed their techniques to new heights that allowed them to craft treasures for primals and predators, most lacked the talent to achieve such mastery and remained mediocre in their abilities. The lack of treasures for primals and predators also contributed to why the beings of this world preferred using human appearances, as that allowed them to wield treasures. That said, only the truly powerful are capable of acquiring treasures, which is why only the top beings in the primal expanse take the form of humans. Sometime later, the refined obsidian dragon led Yuan to a massive cave located at the base of the volcano. The workshop was so massive that Yuan couldn't help but think it had been built for giants. He glanced at the refined obsidian dragon, whose human form was also significantly larger than normal, resembling that of a miniature giant. All sorts of tools hung on the wall, but the most eye-catching was the elegant black hammer that hung prominently above the furnace, its surface gleaming with a mysterious aura. Ingzi also looked around with interest. This was her first time being in this kind of environment, and it piqued her interest. The refined obsidian dragon took a seat near the entrance, his gaze fixed on Yuan and Ingzi. It was as if he were a vigilant guard, ensuring they wouldn't cause any trouble in his workshop. Yuan also sat down and closed his eyes to cultivate. 2 days later, Yuan opened his eyes when he sensed a familiar presence appearing on the remote island. Long Yejun showed up at the workshop shortly after. Were you waiting for me? He asked Yuan. Yes. I figured you wanted to watch. I sure do. Also, this is for you. Long Yejun retrieved a fist-sized crystal that crackled with electric energy, tiny arcs of lightning dancing across its surface. What is this? Yuan asked. The sky-splitting dragon wanted me to give you this as your reward for conquering his training ground in record time. Yuan accepted the crystal and inspected it with interest.